So welcome, great to have everybody here. Thank you for coming. And I'm just going to kick things off in a few minutes with a few housekeeping items, a few little announcements, updates on our programs. But before I do that, we're going to just have a little video to play for you.
Are you ready to ignite? Better. With MEF, you're a part of something better. A better together ecosystem of network, cloud, and technology providers whose sum is greater than the parts. Together, we imagine, invent, and ignite accelerated digital transformation for the enterprise. Together, we deliver secure automated services for a better customer experience. MEF provides the baseline, including MEF 3.0 standardized services, LSO automation APIs, and test, training, and certification, which provides a common language and interoperability, drives mainstream adoption, and ensures predictable outcomes. You differentiate on top of the baseline with innovation, a market-leading portfolio, an extensive partner network, outstanding support, and more. Being a part of this powerful ecosystem allows you to accelerate service delivery, gain competitive advantage, and generate new revenue faster. Welcome to the MEF Better Together ecosystem.
Yeah, so thank you. Lumen is a sponsor. It's great to have them hosting us here. And a little bit later, you're going to hear from their CEO, Jeff Storey. So thank you very much, guys, for hosting us and being part of that. Just a couple of little notes about the housekeeping items. They have all of the committees, as you'll see a little bit later, are meeting. And over the course of the week, they have their own detailed agendas. They're available on the members wiki. All of the presentations and recordings get uploaded, usually by the end of the same day, and are available to the members. And if you're remote joining us, we probably have about half the audience joining us remotely. You can communicate with us by chat. This is our second face-to-face. We had a very successful meeting in Paris, hosted by Orange, and hopefully the coast is clear for us to keep going. Normally we're naming our cities and our venues about 9 to 12 months out, but we're keeping things kind of close at this point in time. But on the top left, you'll see our next meeting is in North America. In the 24th to the 27th of October, 99.99% sure that it's in Miami. So you can pick and put that nice location. And also one of the things that for sure we've decided to do, building on what we did in Paris, is our second ever LSO partner conference, which is a dual track, single day format, attracted about 100 people live in Paris. And with the traction on LSO, we're excited about that. We're going to be in North America again in the winter, and we'll be back in Europe in the spring. And we're looking at, many of you are familiar with our MEF-16, 17, 18, 19 series. We're putting a plan together to maybe bring that back in 23. We have to, put that plan together, poll a whole bunch of people before we board's going to make a decision on that in October. So stay tuned on that one. We have today, I think we have a record number of companies registered, 159. We have 200 member companies, 159 registered. That's a big number. Not all in person, of course, but I think that's a record of registrations as well, 350. We're seeing really good interest in the work all across, the regions, Asia, LATAM, Europe, and so on and so forth. 168 registered in person. I think we have about 135, 140 and counting here now, which is about right for one of these meetings. It's still unclear, with COVID, post-COVID, with the travel policies, just how many people are going to come to these things, on a regular basis. We're still feeling that out. I want to take the opportunity to welcome some new members, as we always do, locally, CSG. They've just joined, obviously motivated by LSO, and they're joining to to enhance their order management and processing platforms with our LSO capabilities. So we're happy to have them. Experio as well from Europe has joined. They're an aggregator for internet and hybrid cloud, SD-WAN, et cetera. And they're implementing LSO Sonata into their APIs as well. They're in the process of doing that. So we're thrilled to have them. And Indosat, they left for a while back. They're out of Indonesia, part of the Urdu group, and they're going to get certified to MEF 3.0. One of the things that's going on is we're seeing, driven by the new nature of our work, the expanded scope of work, we're seeing quite a nice variation of companies coming into the membership. This is just a quick snapshot of the logos over the last 12 months, but you can see there's big, small, there's people oriented around blockchain, OSS, BSS, et cetera, big names like IBM, et cetera. Just a little bit of everything. Telmex out of Mexico. So we're getting some big names, some small companies. It's really about building the right ecosystem to help us execute against our work and get the work adopted in the field. We just completed a press event. We've always really relied heavily on our relationships with the press and the analysts to get our story out there. And some of the members of our board and our technology advisory board, Nan, Pascal, and others were here. And so we have some of our friends from the press and analyst community that'll be participating in the plenary here today. So welcome and thank you for paying attention to MEF. Also, just as a sort of an extracurricular activity, you're going to hear more about MEF and blockchain and as part of the agenda, which I'm going to get into in a few minutes. And what this thing called ITN, and they're having meetings here as well. Some of the members of the ITN are MEF members, as you can see on the left, and some are part of the MOBI Alliance, and you'll hear more about the MOBI Alliance and their membership. There's a lot of stuff happening there, and it's happening pretty quick. So welcome, and thank you for participating with us. We continue, just as a quick program update, to see really good traction with our certification programs. This being our annual meeting, I thought I would just show what's happened over the last year. So you can see some of these are new certified companies. Some of them are just continuing to upgrade, add on certifications to their existing portfolio. And we're almost at an 80 milestone now of MEF 3.0 certified companies. We launched that, announced it in late 2017, and we really started to see certifications in 2018. And our history around this is it does take a while for companies to get organized, get ready. But it's sort of testimony to the fact that Carrier Ethernet is still playing a big role in many of the provider networks, both the services you offer internal in your networks, and still there's good value being seen in the MEF certifications. Also, we just crossed a number of milestones with our professional certification program. We have over 8,000 certified professionals now. 7,000, the lion's share is still Carrier Ethernet with CCP, but we just crossed 1,000 STCPs for SD-WAN certification, and that's starting to pick up. And so any of you that are good consumers and users of MEF standards around SD-WAN, we would encourage you to, Kirby, our Director of Certification, is here. He's talking to a lot of you, and happy to talk to you. And you can see some of the other numbers there as well. And on that topic, there's a new exam that's just being made available. So we had a MEF SD-CP, which was based around MEF-70, with some of the new standards that are out there, 70.1, 88, 105. I'm not going to go through all of these. The exam has been updated to reflect the new work. But there are some folks that are already in the training cycle to take the older exam. So we're going to have that available until the end of September. So you don't have to go back and get retrained again. Just very quickly what the week looks like. It's being our annual meeting, it's been pretty busy. Yesterday pre-meeting, we had a number of things. Some of the committees meet and get some of their work done. We had a really cool, and I think, John, you're probably going to, your panel with Stan, you're going to talk a little bit about yesterday. Yesterday, we brought all the top U.S. service providers together to discuss sort of what's the way forward for LSO in the U.S., and we had, a lot of different perspectives that it was a successful meeting. So these are sort of add-ons to what would be our normal proceedings. The ITN meeting, as I mentioned, this morning, the board and TAB had a joint meeting, Technology Advisory Board. We ran an orientation, more editing sessions, press roundtable. We have our plenary, and we have, after the plenary, board elections. It's a little bit different. Right after you're done, I'm going to ask you to stay here after a little break, and we're going to conduct the elections. We had 11 candidates for 11 positions, so we know who's going to get elected. But there's still a little bit of process I have to follow so I don't get in trouble with, if any of you contacts, my lawyer or something like that. And we have an opening reception, and that's going to be outside, right? I'll make the announcement. I always forget where these things, Lori's shaking her head, right on, outside. And then the next couple of days is all around committee work, and then we wrap up on Thursday afternoon with a closing plenary. Closing plenary is not everybody attends; they're not here, but it's really good to look at the stuff because it's a nice summary of what all the committees did over the course of the week. We've had the opportunity, being that it's our fiscal year, new fiscal year, I decided to bring the staff team together. Many of them who we had never met in person, had never been to a MEF meeting before. So this is the first MEF meeting. We don't always have the full staff contingent at our meetings, but that's the team. They're all here, and we're all here to help you out. So just whatever you need, you can go to the desk, and one of us will be the right person to talk to. With that, I'm going to introduce someone who does not need an introduction. I'll turn it over to Nan. Thank you.
Thanks. Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon, everybody. There you go. Oh, now we're talking. So, first of all, welcome to Denver. What a beautiful city. Don't be like me. I kind of got stuck here since Sunday. I haven't really get out yet. Hopefully, you guys have ability to be able to go outside, enjoy the beautiful weather. So, what I wanted to do is this is actually our first meeting in 2.5 years, but in North America anyway. So we met in Paris. That was amazing, and thank you again, Orange, for sponsoring it. So we had a really good time in Paris. But here's our first meeting in North America. I thought maybe give you guys a little bit of quick review of for the last 2.5 years what we have done, accomplished, and then we said tell you a little bit of how we got there, plus a little bit of opportunities. I'm trying to go through it really quick so that just so that you guys have our keynote speakers coming up a little bit later. So the first of it is the LSO. Great progress on LSO. If you guys remember, what we've done in LSO, completely changed the kind of the landscape, and then the adoption is continue to grow. So we're really happy to see that. In addition, we have the marketplace, the OIT, which is some of you help to build. Obviously, it's amazing. So we have accomplished. So as far as the SD-WAN SASE goes, 25 plus companies either completed or in progress of doing the certification. And plus, we start working on the SASE. In addition, the adoption is still coming up pretty strong for us. Last not least is organization. We started the tab, which has been tremendously helpful for us to shape the future of this organization. And we had a meeting earlier this morning with the board, so we're happy and welcome. These are people who actually contribute to our ability to be able to shape the industry. Also, we started a CBC. And CBC is a really important committee, for us to be able to really drive on the commercial side, and that's been a really successful experiment initially, but it's now in full swing. So I was really pleased to see that. Now, this particular slide is really showing, the better together ecosystem we're built. You see Kevin show all the certifications. We're really trying to build the ecosystems, not only on the just the service provider side. You can see there's going to be technology providers, there's the cloud providers, there's data center providers, as long as also the enterprise, which we want to provide that API, which we talked about for as well. So these are the APIs we're building, but in details, I'm not going to cover a lot of the details, and Pascal is going to come up and talk a little bit later. But these are the things we do. So what we're really doing, we're building the foundation, really the baseline for MEF, and people start to implementing on top of it. That's give us ability to be able to say, hey, there's not only have quickly rapidly building the foundation, but a rapid innovation. They gave us the ability to be able to provide that services to service providers and customers. Those are the enterprises, which is what we're really looking for. And as far as adoption, I know earlier today there's people in the press and analysts and asked the question with regarding the LSO adoption. As you can see, it continues to grow pretty rapidly, for us. By end of next year, we'll have 50 companies, potentially even more so by, continue to move. And at every quarter, when Stan updated this could potentially be actually going up. In fact, the chart was look a little bit different, like even 3 months ago. So we really see this actually continue to evolution in terms of people start to learning the LSOs and adopting it, and people like John pounding on tables to ask people to implementing. So that's really helpful for us. So how do we get there? Well, strategy, leadership, as well as the member contributions. Those are the 3 things. Talking about the strategy, really we define a very clear technical vision, proved by members, as well as the leadership team. And in addition, we're building on the success of Carrier Ethernet, really focusing on the initial LSO API work. That's actually seemed to really resonate well with the membership. And lastly, and not least, we're building a really comprehensive baseline, underlay, overlay, cybersecurity, and to form that SASE and SD-WAN standards. So this is to really help us to move forward. Now let's talk about the leadership. We have a world-class, I would say, the board of directors, but except the guy in sunglasses. Nevertheless, their experience, as well as the amazing leadership, in addition to the influence, has really helped us to move things forward in this, really turbulent environment we're facing. So my sincere appreciation for those guys who are serving on the board, and you guys are rock stars. Also, we have a tremendous technical advisory board, and these guys, in their own way, changed the world, our world, telecommunication world, one way or the other. So it's a grateful to have people such a caliber to come in and join us and to really help us to move the industry forward. My sincere appreciations for it. Of course, the people you already knew. Those are the committee leaders and really help us to kind of move the committee forward, herd the cats, so to speak, and be able to get things done. So I'll show you a little bit about what we have accomplished and a little bit later. Our contribution has been really amazing, all due to the members. A member has been really stepping up over the last 2.5 years to contributing to this. And we have 63 active projects in all 4 different committees. And as a result, there's 40 new standards. Think about that, 40 new standards. 140 call for comments and 859 ballot votes. And just put that into perspective. The last 2 years, a little bit over 2 years, we have 859 votes. I mean, it's crazy. So basically, we have votes every single day and twice on Sundays. I mean, it's pretty amazing, in terms of accomplishment. People are really working hard to move things forward. So thank you, my hats off. As a shining star, as an example of such, these are the ones who are contributing for this particular quarter, and 3 standards that we actually just proved this morning in board meeting. Larry, Alejandra, and Jack. So it's a really a pleasure to see the things that are coming together. And these are the veterans of MEF really helping us to move things forward. Without these editors, and we won't be able to close those standards. So my sincere appreciation, and they're well-deserved editor awards. So yeah, there you go. Thank you. Thank you very much. So opportunities. Very clear. So we want to lead the industry in automation. The LSOs are going crazy. I think now we really see the adoption rates start picking up, and we just see the number of companies that are joining from certification perspective and joining for implementation perspective. So we're really happy to see that. SD-WAN and SASE market has really start to mature, really start to accelerate. So we wanted to do that. But I'm going to show you a picture right after this and see the opportunities we have. Really expand our membership community. That's actually the key for collaboration and industry impact. So in terms of opportunity, if you think about what this body has accomplished in terms of the industry as well, see the blue lines are the carrier Ethernet in terms of the service market. That's over basically the 20-year period, if you would, 22-year period. And then the little, like the orange lines, those are SD-WAN. Just think about it, just compare that. You knew there's this tremendous opportunity for SD-WAN to continue to grow. I just thought this would be an illustration of, first of all, what we have accomplished as an organization, although people didn't want to call it Carrier Ethernet or Ethernet Forum anymore. But nevertheless, it is amazing what this body and what the industry has accomplished. But number two, it's such a great opportunities in front of it, just the SD-WAN. Okay, so my hope is that we can really work together to actually make things work. This is just one aspect of what we do, from SD-WAN perspective. Now I need all of you guys to be able to be the evangelist for MEF. Clearly we have a lot of things we need to do, in the industry to get influence out, to get the message out, to get awareness out, and also we want to drive the adoption of our work. And our work has been, exemplary, from my perspective. We really want to make sure that the industry as a whole to adopt this. So this is incredible. Last and not least, it is continue the momentum and really embrace the change and what we have. So, so with that, I appreciate your time. Hopefully, give you a good breadth of update for the last 2.5 years. So thank you. So now, his resume is so long. I have to think of multiple pages anyway. So first of all, it's really my honor to introduce Jeff Storey, who is President and CEO of Lumen, the guy who has done incredible work in terms of advance the industry in so many different ways. Before Lumen, he was the President and CEO of Level 3, which acquired CenturyLink. Did I get that right? Or did I get it right? So, but anyway, so you know what I mean. I just amazing what Jeff has accomplished. And before that, he's the President and CEO of Worldtel. And he also served as a presidential appointment on National Security of Telecommunication Advisory Committee. So since 2016, I mean, he certainly had a incredible career. Every single company he touched and really kind of changed the world, so to speak, in our industry. But I think the most, to me, obviously I'm biased, the most important accomplishment he has done in his career is being named 2019 MEF Person of the Year. Obviously, that's why. So, without further ado, here's a Jeff.
Thank you, John. I'm happy that the sports coat and tie I'm wearing aren't the ones in the picture. This is the first time in 2.5 years that I've come to work in a sport coat. So, and I didn't actually make it. I left it in the car, went to the office, then came down here. So I didn't make it all the way into the office. We're thrilled to have you in Colorado. It's been a tough 2.5 years for all of us. This is my first time to talk to a group like this. Microphone came on, I guess. Been my first time to talk to a group like this in a couple of years. So we're very excited to have you, and And welcome to Lumen, welcome to Colorado. You're not actually at Lumen, but we're just up the hill. So the campus is right around the corner. Grab Andrew, grab Rob, grab some of our team if you want to go up there. I'm going to talk just for a few minutes about the Lumen strategy and what we want out of MEF and what we think is the connection between what we're doing and what you're doing. And I'll end with kind of talking more about MEF, but really about our strategy. And I think that in the strategy, especially our network strategy, you'll see a lot of the work that you're doing is critical to us. So this is a chart that we use. It's about driving customer success. And I talked to our team for the last couple of years about driving customer success as a technology company. Not as a telecom company, but as a technology company. Telecom companies take orders one at a time. A customer calls us, says, I need more capacity. We take the order. We go type on the network management system to activate the capacity. That's a telecom company. Technology company interfaces with their customers and their network through software. So SD-WAN that Nan mentioned is kind of the first step of that, or a step in that direction. But as a technology company, we want to interface with our infrastructure through software, and we want to interface with our customers through software. So I'll start at the bottom of this and look at the infrastructure. And I apologize. I'm the CEO of Lumen, so I've got to give a little bit of a Lumen commercial. Most of you are customers of ours, or vendors of ours, or competitors of ours, and many of you are all three. So this is about Lumen, not about our position in the industry as much. But I think we have among the world's greatest infrastructure. You know, we have deep and rich fiber networks, primarily in the U.S., but also in EMEA. And we continue to expand those fiber networks. But then we layer on various technologies on top of that to create, with peering networks and other things, just a great infrastructure. But we still control it too much by manual intervention, by human intervention. And that's where our platform comes in. We've launched the Lumen platform, which allows us to embed control and orchestration and security into our infrastructure through the platform, and then acts as an intermediary between our customers and their applications and the platform itself, and then the network. And so we view this architecture, and we've talked about it for a few years, as the right architecture for us going forward, the right way to think about it. And all of that depends on APIs, whether it's APIs from our platform controlling the network to where we can instantiate a service instantaneously, or if it's the customer applications, or even some of our internal applications interfacing through the platform and down into the network. So this is our approach. I think you'll see some commonality between this and what you've been working on at MEF. This is a simple one, elements of the Lumen strategy. What do we have to do to really drive customer success? And the first is a digital-first experience. I don't want to do anything that we don't have to with humans. I'd rather have everything. That's a terrible statement, I realize that. But I'd like to have everything automated. I'd like to have a digital first. When people do interact with us, they do it through digital interfaces, not by picking up the phone and calling somebody, not by taking a meeting with a sales person, but actually interfacing with our systems, with our capabilities digitally. And digital first for sure. You know, I'd like to have digital only at some point. We'll start with digital first. Product simplification. To do that, you have to really simplify your products. You can't have 15 versions of SD-WAN or VPN or whatever the product is, security. You need to really simplify the products, and you need to standardize the interfaces. You have to have a standard way of talking to your customer, of talking to their application, whether it's the human or whether it's their system. You have to have standard ways of talking to them. And you have to transform the network, because the network has to continue to evolve. You know, whether it's, we've launched 400 gig waves. That's a great product to have, but the network has to evolve. We continue to integrate security and orchestration into the products. To do that, the network has to evolve. And so we'll continue to transform the network for the new capabilities, SD-WAN, SASE, all of the things that Nan talked about. And then you have to enable access for our services. The world, I'm a core network guy, right? The world lives at the edge. The world lives at the edge of the network. You have to get people on your network if you're going to be successful, if you're going to provide the types of services that they need. So we are working very hard to really standardize and enable access into our network and into our services and into our platform. So this is a chart probably half the companies in the room can have. At the bottom, it talks about the customer journey. And this is kind of standard industry language, but the customer journey is learn, buy, get, use, pay, and renew. So the different phases that a customer of ours goes through when they're thinking about Lumen and using our services. And then we believe that all digital experience is so critical. I'm not going to go through each one of these, but the lumen.com is how customers learn about us. Let's make it a digital experience. Let's target them digitally. You won't see any Lumen ads on television. You might see the Lumen field on Monday Night Football, but you won't see any ads from us on television or any of that. What you'll see is hopefully doing a much better job of digital marketing and allowing people to access lumen.com and making that experience meaningful. I have a vision of I want people to be able to play with network designs on lumen.com. They come in, they engineer it, they play with it, and then at some point they go, hey, I think I'll just buy that. But if they don't buy it, if they just learn about the network, they learn about the services, they learn about the technologies that are embedded, that's good enough for me. I want people to learn about Lumen through lumen.com. We have a marketplace, and that helps on the buy. And we want you to be able to buy as simple, or our customers, to be able to buy as simply as you can on Amazon or Walmart.com or any of those. We want to make our services, our partners' services, all available over the marketplace that we've built to make that all digital experience come true. If you look at our mass market side, we've already started doing all of this. We have the Lumen marketplace on the enterprise side as well, but on our mass market side, we're using it pretty effectively. Control center. How do you, as a customer, get, use, and pay for your services? How do we make that a digital experience and make it simple for the customer to interface with their network that we provide? And then lastly, we want to partner with people as a development center. Help them build applications or at least help them interface their applications through standard interfaces with us to build new capabilities. We want to be the platform for other people's applications to run and really make it easy for all the process from learn all the way through pay. Make it easy for customers to operate the businesses that they do with us. So this is actually your slide, okay? This is a MEF slide, and if I wanted to change it and make it a Lumen slide, I would take out the 3 little MEF logos and I'd put Lumen logos. So I agree very much with this slide. This is the way that we ought to think about it. This is the way that we ought to standardize. I call them APIs, you call them LSO APIs, same thing. And for the member companies, it's sometimes hard for us as companies to not want to tweak everything to where it gives us a competitive advantage, right? Where we tweak the standards to where it's only good for Lumen and maybe not as good for anybody else. I remember talking to the FCC one time and telling them, look, all I want is a fair advantage over our competitors. We shouldn't approach the APIs that way. We should approach the APIs as the way to satisfy our customers and the way to standardize our industry helps us dramatically to run more efficiently, run better. I started my career as an engineer and a technologist. I tell our sales team all the time that I'm still an engineer. They think I'm being humble. I know I'm bragging. But I'm not going to tell this group I'm a technologist because I'm not anymore. But I am a business guy worried about free cash flow. And how do we drive long-term free cash flow for our companies? And a big part of our strategy is to make it, and many of our competitors in the room would say the exact same thing. Big part of our strategy is providing a great customer experience. Make it simple for people to interface with us. Certainly give high quality services that are reliable and predictable, but making it simple to interact with us, making it simple to embed their technology, their applications into us, or ours into them, whichever way you view it. And if you do that, if you drive a great customer experience, you make it simple, you grow revenue, and you take out costs for the providers. And that's good for all of us as a company. It drives free cash flow by doing these things. So I come here saying thank you to MEF, not from a technology standpoint, that's cool and that's great, but from a business standpoint. This actually helps our industry be better, more responsive to our customers, and better to integrate with each other, whether it's a carrier to carrier or a carrier to an enterprise, makes it easier for us to interoperate. So I think I have like 5 minutes. I'll be glad to take questions. If they sound too much like a technology question, I'm either going to ignore it and pretend you didn't ask, or I'm going to direct it to Andrew Dugan or Rob Ward or Laurent, some of our team here. Now, if this was my group of our employees, I always tell them, you know, if you don't ask me questions, I'm going to start asking you questions. I don't think I can say that to this group, but sure, go ahead.
Okay. Thank you for hosting our meeting this week. This is kind of a loaded question. I'd just like your view on how you work with or against or whatever the hyperscalers these days.
We work with them. There's not a lot of use in working against. So we work with them. We try to enable their business. We treat them like a customer and say, you know, we want you to be as successful as possible. How do we help you do that? And there's a mix of ways to do it. I mean, we sell to some of the hyperscalers voice services. Shocking, but we sell voice services. From that all the way to 400 gig waves, you know, so there's a range of services. The way we work with them is try to understand what their business needs are, help them solve those business needs. You know, we partner with them in some ways, and I won't list any specific ones, but we've announced partnerships with various hyperscalers along the way and things that we do together with them. But we view them as critical to our industry and a big driver in the industry of where technology goes and where the market goes and what our customers need. Sure. All right, I won't make you ask questions. Have fun this week. We are very excited to participate for a long time in MEF. So Nan and Kevin, thank you for having me here today. All have a good week.
Thank you, Jeff, for that. It's awesome. Up next is someone everybody knows, our CTO, Pascal, who's going to provide his regular update on our technology strategy and maybe some other stuff too, right?
Well, everybody says I take too much time, so I got my timer here this time. So let's see if I can make it. Let's start right here. Well, I do want to, let's see if we get the slide up here. I do want to give a big applause to Jeff. What an incredible keynote. And what a great viewpoint. Thank you, Jeff. So what I'm going to cover basically is just really highlight the MEF value proposition. I think the slide that Jeff presented is actually even very more nicer graphics than myself, what I've created. I'll talk about technical execution, and I'll talk about the automation. I think automation is critical, and it's now become a must-have. And I will talk about why it's a must-have, and automation is now become, if you want to be cloud-like in agility, you must have automation. And we'll talk about it in a lot of details. So I do apologize to the Digital Service Committee. I won't cover probably anything in what you guys are working on, but of course, all of our automation is based upon your attributes, and then translated to data models and schemas. So hands off, hats off, and big applause to you guys. Thank you. So as Jeff talked about, this is our slide. We've been talking at a high level. As you know, we have been delivering on tremendous set of APIs thanks to our LSO committees, all our members, our contractors, and so on. And I got to say, what a journey that's been. I came in the CTO 6 years ago, and really we had MEF-CECP, which I'll show you shortly. And in 6 years, we developed a tremendous amount of API assets, and more than just API assets we'll cover. And it's really going to make a difference, and it's already making a difference in all of our membership. With also the APIs, we've also taken, going up the stack, going from Carrier Ethernet, and now taken on SD-WAN, SASE, Zero Trust. I'm proud to say, I'm hopeful to say, that SASE and Zero Trust will go into letter ballot very shortly here in leaving Denver, and that would be a great milestone for us, and I hope that happens. No pressure. And then finally, we're doing some great work at edge compute and slicing, and then obviously, all of this is wrapped around automation and our certification. And we'll cover more details of this slide as I go through the presentation. What MEF has really enabled, in my opinion, is much like open source. We've created this blueprint, this baseline blueprint that has the automation aspects of it, a real clarity of vocabulary and definition and service definition of our standards, specifically not just Carrier Ethernet and Internet access and L1CS and so on, but now the network transformational services of SD-WAN, SASE, Zero Trust, edge computing, slicing. Really incredible to get up that stack and really deliver all of that with an automation capabilities. And then obviously rapid certification. But like open source, we do not want to commoditize any of our members or vendors or service providers. We want to make sure that you have the ability to innovate on top with all the great assets you bring, all the great features, your support, your ecosystem partners, and so on. So it's real important to take away that MEF is trying to create a baseline, a blueprint for you to leverage, just like open source, to create great, incredible, valuable products into the industry. So I'm really pleased to say that our technical execution is being absolutely superb. I cannot say I'm so much more happier than where we are today. As you can see with those boxes, I remember presenting this slide years ago, telling that, hey, you know, we were at the bottom of the connectivity layer, didn't have much in automation, we're trying to go up the stack, and I remember bringing up the slide when people were looking at me kind of weird and saying, really, are we going to be able to do all of this stuff? But I got to say, our members have been incredible. All of our contributors, all of our co-chairs who have led this from leadership level, and our board with the vision to support all of this has been incredible. And we have delivered not only the connectivity layer, grew up to $80 billion market, we have now delivered on the SD-WAN and continually evolve that. We're about to embark and release the first standardization of SASE Zero Trust and moving up the stack into edge computing and slicing. And then today I'll cover a lot about our automation APIs. Incredible feat of what we've done in automation. And we've done that so it's high fidelity, high interoperable APIs. And hats off, cheers, and big round of applause to all of our membership that make this happen. So as I said, the theme of this session will be on automation. And I want to talk about automation has gone to a must-have. It cannot be a nice-to-have anymore, as I talked about before. Automation, as Jeff talked about, it starts with that customer experience. They all want to be able to go to portal, and now soon you'll see machines want to be able to access APIs, and that starts the workflow right through with machines managing all of that workflow within the service provider domain and across the whole supply chain. And automation is critical. And at MEF, we took it very seriously, delivered the first lifecycle service framework, I think 7 years ago, 8 years ago, and now that's being realized. So this is it right here. When I came into MEF, this was the document we have, really well written, and it was the Bible that we went to and basically used on how we delivered all our APIs. And MEF-CECP after 7 years, is still being used as our guiding principles in Post of how we build APIs, and these are really referring to reference points. And I'm not getting into the details of this, but as you can see in the north-south direction, from Legato to Presto, and so on, that describes the decomposition from the BSS systems to this life cycle or the service orchestration that has come in. And then below that represents all the networking aspects of SDN controllers or legacy EMS systems or NFV Manos and whatever. But more importantly, we recognize that in order to really make this automation happen, there was a deficiency in the industry, that there was no standardization in this inter-provider automation and facing the enterprise. And this is really what we really went out to solve. And I think we've done a brilliant job, and you'll be able to tell me if that's actually true, and I'll cover this in a second. So what we found was that automation was in place, but it was very fractured. It was all bespoke, pairwise, proprietary, and when there was no automation, there was a lot of manual. Telecom came from the manual space and has been evolving into automation, but everybody had their own version of automation. And when we looked at this inter-provider model, and which we'll talk about, Sonata, is where we created our beachhead. This is where we started with, because we figured if we could have a beachhead, then we could always, expand and wedge our way through, which is, I really like the Geoffrey Moore model of crossing the chasm. And I think this is very important. And I think what we've done here is basically looked at saying, hey, how do we move to a more federated model, a many-to-many model on the right of this diagram? How do we basically take and allow everybody to be able to plug in from all the providers and all the different technology providers with their clouds, plug in a way that is high fidelity, highly interoperable, and highly extendable. And I think, to me, we've achieved that, and we'll continue to evolve that. And I'm going to go into that details. So here's what we did. We took the TM Forum APIs, the 60-plus APIs. We really reduced them down to the lifecycle management of what it takes for APIs. And you can see this is a truly lifecycle management. The top half is the commercial side. And I won't be able to have time to go through all of it, but from everything from checking from an address to what's available and services to then getting a price quote, ordering, update the inventory. And now we're at the operational aspect of, and hopefully the plan is by the end of December to deliver on the whole service provisioning aspects, and then basically the whole service function testing, the performance management, the fault management, and then go back to trouble ticketing, and then finally using blockchain, Daniel will talk about, and the invoicing aspects to really settle on all of this. And this is truly, I believe, the life cycle. Maybe we'll miss a couple of APIs we'll add in the future, but I truly believe this is the life cycle, and we're seeing this used in production. Additionally, what we did was not only deliver high fidelity capabilities on those TM Forum APIs and matured them to a very, very high quality and context, but we also took all of our great work from the Digital Services Committee, and we basically took that and we took all of the attributes that were described in the service behavior and started modeling that and created the schemas from that. So what we now got is not only APIs that could do anything from ordering pizzas to bandwidth to turning up sophisticated edge services, but it could also handle all kinds of product and services, not only MEF-based of carry Ethernet, where we came from an internet access now for SD-WAN scenarios, but now you're seeing that the need from Cantata to have the experience of provisioning SD-WAN and SASE and zero trust and slicing, and how that will go across the ecosystem to finally, enabling then also the ability for things we've not defined. How do we enable the same APIs I just showed you to have new products and services that we can't define? So we created this handbook. We have this ability to teach all members that want to create innovative new kinds of products and services, like maybe IoT, maybe for things like voice that we didn't define. And we'll give you the handbook, and just like the App Store, we will teach you how to build your schema like we've done for the rest of the MEF stuff. We'll also validate that schema, make sure it's going to work, and give you a unique resource naming URN that would basically give you that uniqueness to be able to put that. And we couple that with, I'll show you the App Store or the marketplace, where you can actually put all your schemas in of your own vendor capability, of your own proprietary version of that schema. And the goal is to take that version of your schema that is voice-based or IoT-based and try to get all other participants around it, just like we've been doing in MEF for other of the MEF certs like SD-WAN, SASE. Our marketplace will allow you to do that also. Now, this is how we really deliver these APIs, and I think it's very innovative. And hats off, to TM Forum that came up with this polymorphic model, and to ONAP and ONF that adopted it also, and we adopted it. It was a lot of work to get the mindset to think this way, and it is kind of a little bit. You have to really get your head around this idea, like, what do you mean by polymorphism, and what do you mean that there's going to be two schemas involved, and there's an API, what we call the envelope part, and this payload part, and like this is kind of a little weird. But we've done that, and we have this envelope part, which is the API part I just showed you, and the payload part was all the service definitions. And basically what we did was we took the TM form, as I told you, we modified those envelope API side to make them high fidelity. We created our service schemas from the models from our service definitions of SD-WAN, Carrier Ethernet, SASE, and so on. And then, thanks to contributions to our membership, we created tooling that could take that and blend that and make it look like a standard REST JSON API. And that's what we call the static model. But there's also opportunities to do dynamic, and I won't talk about it technically, but that's where we're going to, that the API can stay consistently and the products can change in features or in versions, and you don't have to change out all the API. So that's the ideal goal of this polymorphism, to have dynamic binding capabilities. That's a little technical, but I think if you want to know more, just reach me or the LSO committee and chairs. The other thing I think it's really important we talked about is that it's not just about APIs anymore. APIs and Web 3.0 has realized that blockchains play a significant role. And now what you're seeing is APIs and blockchain works together. And you can see from this diagram that even when we run APIs between buyer and sellers, that there would be some set of the APIs going through the blockchain, like for example an order, and then those orders are recorded on the blockchain and stamped with a digital identifier, which we call the ITN, which Daniel will cover. And that digital identifier with that transaction is stored. So when it comes to invoicing, there's the ability to not repudiate and say, I trust that. It is accurate. I can't repudiate it because it is the truth. It's the source of truth. And I think it's very important. And I think this is exactly what the industry needs to have, not just APIs, but API and blockchain coexist together. So I'm really excited about this initiative, and Daniel will talk more about it. Also, these are the automation aspects. I won't have time to go through all of them, but we've done a phenomenal job of building incredible assets in automation. We started with not just building APIs, but we went through great pain to drive out the use case and business requirements. And thanks to our LSO committees and many of our contributors and contractors did a brilliant job to actually think through the business workflow of that. And that drove the creation of our APIs. So we took the TM Forum APIs, modified them with their blessing and with their governance, and now created these MEF APIs, which are not interoperable with TM Forum APIs because there are variances. And then basically from that, delivered really high quality developer guides. Then added to that, we created all of these payload schemas for MEF stuff, Carrier Ethernet and Internet Access Now, and SD-WAN and SASE and Zero Trust to come and so on. And then taking all of that with our blockchain I just described, and then taking all of that and having tooling to blend all that stuff together and make it work has been really powerful. In addition, we heard our members saying, I'm not going to onboard all these partners, so I need a platform. Someone has to do that. And now we have an onboard interop test platform that's now available for onboarding all kinds of partners and doesn't put the onus of the main buyer to tell all their sellers of how they should sell to the buyer. Also, we have certification. It's really launched, and I think it's going to continue to evolve, and I hope to evolve to be very sophisticated, because I think certification, what IoT did was allow developers to play and to evolve and to continue to try their development process. But once they reach the point of saying, I'm in production, then the goal is certification comes in and says, yeah, you're production ready. Let me test you to see you're production ready. And I think that's a very critical aspect. Then finally, you saw we just announced, and the board just voted 128, our security profile for APIs into standard. I think it's incredible work that we've done here. And I don't think very many organizations thinks about securing APIs. And if you look at that work, it's modeled off the banking industry, and it delivers a very secure model of how to do API security. And that will evolve into decentralized IDs and drive the blockchain on the IT end. So Daniel will talk more about that. And then finally, we've launched the marketplace, and we have developer support. And the marketplace, if you've not gone to it, you should go to it. It's really, really awesome, and it's just going to continue to evolve. And Daniel's been driving that, and kudos to him and all the team that delivered on that. So I'll just cover really fast. I've got 4 minutes. Our interprovider, Sonata, has really, really taken off. It allows the buy and sell of the ecosystem between the retail and wholesale side. It's got a lot of these same APIs I talked about in commercial, operational, and blockchain. We've got tremendous adoption. I won't be able to go through it, but you can read the slides on your own. You'll be able to, and Stan, I'm sure, has talked to you, but we're getting tremendous adoption in this area, especially on Carrier Ethernet and now internet access. But really our goal is, how do we take what we've already done, which is on the connectivity layer of the access loops, and how do we now enable horizontal integration where we can connect all kinds of clouds from technology providers, have SASE running on their own clouds, and not have to vertically integrate in our service provider POPs and so on. And a lot of our tier 2 and 3 members around the world don't have that capabilities and the cybersecurity skill sets. As you know, I think I just saw 800,000 missing cybersecurity professionals are needed right now just in America, and we're trying to get programs for that. How do we get security operational centers or emergency response teams? Many of our members don't have this. How do we enable that through horizontal integration of APIs? And then how do we even, for example, buy power and space on radios or on power and space data centers and so on? And then finally, hyperscalers is critical. So I think, we've got these APIs, these payloads I talked about. We have these MEF payloads, non-MEF payloads. We need to do a lot more work. We talked about this just on Monday, and we're going to do more work on this to make sure we realize that it's also extensible. I won't have time to cover this, but we're doing a tremendous amount of work to make sure our APIs, our payloads, have high fidelity, high interoperability, and high extensibility. Now let's get to the enterprise, facing the enterprise, because I think the journey and the experience starts really here, and I think this is really important. So let me start here. It has to start with the experience, as Jeff talked about. It starts with the buyer and the enterprise, the ability to go into a portal, understand what they can get, what they can buy, and from what addresses. And it has to look like that retail provider owns it globally. Even if they don't, and they're interfacing with the back-end systems of sellers and supply chains, it's really critical that the APIs we've developed for the ecosystem, Sonata, actually applies also on Cantata. And I think it's more than just a portal. We're moving to the world of digital transformations, and now we want machines, and we want applications to consume APIs, not portals, but APIs. Of course, it's the same APIs that are driving the web browser and the user behind it, but the machines now want to consume it, and the applications want to consume it. And Cantata is really where we need to get to now and get mainstream adoption, because the workflow starts at Cantata and then drives all the way through to Sonata and obviously down through Legato and into the service providers network. So I really believe that while IT is moving to the cloud, is driving and bringing a lot of our SASE and SD-WAN, all our network transformation services, and the need for getting connectivity and so on, there is also a market driver that's new revenue that everybody's trying to grab onto, which is digital transformation. And it's a massive, massive economy, and it's really new workflows that have been digitizing, and we want to be able to grab access to that. So as you can see, and I'll go really fast because I'm already at my 20 minutes, and I said I'd try to keep it 20 minutes, that smart glasses is coming in. I asked board members, I said, what do you think? Are we gonna replace cell phones with smart glasses? And I'm gonna bet in 5 to 10 years, you won't have cell phones. You'll have smart glasses. You'll be interfacing with natural languages. You'll see things and be able to interact with the world in ways we've never imagined. I'm a firm believer in that. Second, IoT is appearing everywhere, and I won't get into it, but it actually is a part of that digital transformation that we've never seen before. And AI, ML, as you see, smart, the old the whole Industry 4 initiative and all smart factories and warehouses, all driven by AI, ML. Deep neural networks are living everywhere. Everything's about AI, ML in every aspect of the industry. And finally, all applications are becoming cloud native, microservices in nature, which means they live everywhere as components, and the network is the full computer in the bus, and that's all driven through now sidecars, service meshes, and finally Kubernetes is the orchestration for all of this. So containers are critical, and it is absolutely where the market, when you're saying digital transformation, you mean cloud native, and when you mean cloud native, everything is about being microservice in nature. 5G, I think, is absolutely tied to this. It is delivering wire-like qualities with wireless capabilities. And as you can see, there's many, many use cases I'm not going to delve into. And that all is part of that digital transformational journey. So my call to action, and I'm literally 2 minutes late, is one, implement the Sonata LSO APIs. Just start with carrier Ethernet. And then internet access is what we're going for. And then once you've done that, start making your experience with Cantata. Our Cantata is very, very evolved. It continues to evolve more. It's ready to go. Okay, it's ready to go for sure for carrier Ethernet, ready to go for internet access. We're working on SD-WAN to make sure that's ready to go also. And then we're adding in all the Allegro parts for the operational aspects. And then finally, join the MEF blockchain. Put yourself as a node in, because blockchains and APIs, as I said, are becoming synonymous. So with that, I want to thank you, and I'll bring it up to the panel here. So thank you for your time, and I appreciate that.
Pascal, especially for staying on time after we cut half your slides out just before the plenary started. We felt it only fitting, we're back in the U.S., that we bring, representation, board representation of the top, the largest U.S. operators with us. As I mentioned, they participated in a really good session yesterday. Stan, our principal analyst, I think most of you know, is going to moderate, and I just wanted to know what everybody thought of these chairs, though. I mean, I think they're the funniest looking chairs I've ever seen in a hotel. It looks like they bought them from some 1970s Las Vegas casino or something like that. Anyway, you guys can tell us if they're comfortable and whether we should go that route again. All right, over to Stan.
Thanks, Kevin. Yeah, I like the comment on the chairs. I'm looking forward to sitting in one. All right, so if I can just ask our panelists to come on up. We have Devika Bhattacharya, Chief Product Officer for Verizon Business Group, Andrew Dugan, CTO of Lumen, and John Nolan, VP Global Connection Management for AT&T. All board members, all very happy, excited to be here with me. And so, is it good?
Sorry. Sit down slowly.
Yeah. All right, that's cool. All right, so we're really excited to talk about this topic of service automation and particularly zeroing in on LSO Sonata APIs. And we had a really nice press conference earlier today, a press and analyst conference. But yesterday we had a number of leading service providers in the US market get together and talk about what can we do to help drive the market forward. Just to give you a little bit of backdrop, and then I'll have each of them comment. We're tracking the market. We're tracking more than 90 service providers now worldwide. That's up more than 120% since this time last year. And our forecast, you saw some of the numbers earlier. We're looking at growing from about 22 companies in production today as buyers or sellers, and growing that to about 60 by the end of 2024. And the folks up here are going to make that happen, along with a number of others out here in the audience that are moving along that path as well. And I just wanted to start off with that as a backdrop, but maybe if you could comment on sort of the discussion yesterday, your take on where we are in the U.S. market. What are some of the key takeaways? Maybe, John, you start us off.
Sure. First of all, it was great seeing all the people that we interact with regularly all in one room at once. Usually we have conversations on a one-to-one basis, and this has been a topic of conversation for quite a while now. Outside the U.S., where we didn't rely on decades-old standard ways of placing orders. The LSO APIs were a big step forward in terms of how we check for service availability, get the latest pricing, ultimately place orders, get order status, want to be able to open trouble tickets and get trouble ticketing status. Here in the US, we've got a lot of legacy systems that we have to contend with. Everybody with those legacy systems has a roadmap to modernize, and so it's really a question of where we can insert this vision into that roadmap and making sure that people understand the benefits around not having to pick up the phone or send an email to get status, getting orders submitted cleanly the first time, faster revenue recognition, better customer experience, and hopefully less disputes on the back end. So everybody in the room came at it, I think, from a little bit different perspective on where they are in the journey, whether they've experimented with APIs, how quickly they think they can do it, but just having the conversation amongst the service providers, you know, and engaging the level of interest across the entire community, I thought was very helpful.
Yeah, I thought it was a great meeting also, and it was good to have everybody together. You know, one of the things I sort of took away from it, there was a couple actions that I was excited about, but the thing I took away from it is, for us, it's not a matter of whether we're going to implement APIs. As Jeff explained, we're going to be a digital-first company. The only way to do that is through automation, and that's going to require APIs for us to interact with our customers and our partners. So what APIs are we going to use? And you know, there really is only one choice in the industry today that's sort of a globally accepted standard and defined well enough that we can all operate within it. And that's the set of APIs that this group's working on. So you know, we had some conversation yesterday around timing, where people are, what their next steps were. People are at different places. They've implemented different parts of the API, either on the buy side or sell side. So one of the things we took away from yesterday that I want to dig into a little bit more is, can we create some sort of heat map around where the activity is within implementation of the APIs, so that people can see, who's, not necessarily by name who's implementing, but how much activity is there on the buy side, how much activity is there on the sell side, and which of the APIs people are working on. I think that will help people focus on where they might get the most benefit for starting down the implementation path.
Okay, great. Billy?
Yeah, I would agree with what was stated. What was good about the meeting yesterday, there was consensus, Andrew, to your point, that we have to do this. We're at a time where we really cannot delay it any further. What was interesting was that different providers, as was mentioned, might have been in different parts of the journey, and so there's different amounts of work that needs to happen to make the business case work. So, but as with anything, the devil's always in the details, so you have to work through those. But there was overall consensus that automation is the way to go. Plus, creating APIs is not new for service providers. Been doing that for a long time, but what's new is the standard. Previously, there was proprietary APIs or pairwise APIs, but what this allows us to do is to create it once, use the standard APIs, and reuse them across the board. The other area that I personally found very interesting is the reusability of Sonata to Cantata. Pascal just talked about it, but that is also an opportunity, not just between carrier to carrier and making that whole interaction much more digital and efficient, but also on the customer side and how we create a much more digital experience on the enterprise to service provider interface, which naturally follows the work that all of you have done on Sonata.
Great, great on covering some of the highlights there. I wanted to pick up on a comment Andrew made, and then maybe we can get into some of the benefits a little bit more. Andrew talked about you'd like to see a heat map. One of the things that I'm doing on the research side is really looking at companies that are implementing or planning to implement as a buyer or seller, what SDK release are they on, and what functions do they intend to implement, and also what partners are they working with. And so we're gathering that information. We could create a heat map, but I think the key thing that a lot of people are asking me for is, can I have that visibility into where the service providers are, who are the names and all that. We have some of that information, some of that detail on the website in the LSO Partners directory, but we need approval from more members in order to put out that information publicly. So we're collecting it. It's just a question of whether we get approval or not. But let's dig into the benefits here a little bit more. We have a number of service providers that are looking to accelerate service delivery, accelerate time to revenue, improve the customer experience. But can you kind of contrast that with a little bit more about what the process is today and where you expect to go? And what's sort of the longer term play? Once you achieve these first set of benefits, what do you expect over time? Maybe you want to go first?
Yeah, I'll go first. So ultimately where we need to get to is that vision that Jeff sort of described, which is full automation. A customer or partner can come order a service and it gets activated within minutes, and they can manage the service and have changes made within seconds. We're not quite there today with our implementation of the LSO APIs. Today we do have some interfaces that we're implementing with partners. In the U.S., the process that we use today is the use of ASRs, right? And that's that legacy ordering process that you talked about. So how do we get there? We've talked about whether we create a converter, a mapping from LSO to the ASRs. That doesn't necessarily accelerate our capabilities immediately, but it gives us a path to then starting to use those LSO APIs for more things. The ASR process doesn't cover all the telecom services that we offer today or that will be offered in the future. So we need a bridge, and we need to start building that bridge.
Yeah, I would agree. The ASR process has been around for a long time. I don't think I've heard anybody who actually likes it and thinks it's fit for purpose going forward, but it works, right? So there's a business case needs to be made to either migrate away from it or evolve from it. So there's different ways to do it. One is you can look at places where ASRs are not implemented, right? Is it international? Is that the place to start? Services that are not supported by ASRs today, is that the place to start? Keeping in mind that, at least for Verizon, and I'm sure some of the other larger providers, the bulk of revenue that is carried, it still uses the ASR process. So we can't trivialize it. We can't throw it away. So we have to have a migration path. And the other piece that's also really important, though, is the transformation within the provider's environment. Because if you can create APIs, but then if you still have a lot of legacy processes and systems internally, you've created a more modernized API, but then you're still using older constructs and older processes. So this is also an opportunity for us to look at ourselves and modernize some of our commercial constructs, some of our product definitions, so that you're not taking an older process and just automating parts of it, but you're actually using this opportunity to reimagine and design for the future.
That's a really good point. One of the comments I heard back from several companies that provided feedback in our survey is, just the fact that I brought forward the APIs to my team and we're going down the development path, it's caused us to do a lot of additional changes internally. So they're modernizing alongside of that and having to change the processes to align to it. And they're very excited that they're almost being forced to do that, right?
That's right.
And I know one of the forces out there forcing them to do that is John, right? But you've actually got implementations. Can you go into a little bit about what you've experienced on that and kind of what you expect going forward?
Sure. First, a shout out to Aiden Anderson on my team, who's put in the work, and put in the hours to make this happen with a number of our most of world suppliers, which very appreciative to those that have implemented. Everyone else that we speak with has been very receptive to the idea. But whether it's a move at or a change that today takes days for a customer to realize, they're expecting a more cloud-like experience where they can spin things up real time. We've got to get there, and I think it was Wayne Gretzky who said, skate to where the puck is going, not where it is. This is where the puck is going. So the industry is getting on board with it. Outside the US, they've been very receptive. My goal is to have a significant portion, the majority of my orders outside the US flowing to carriers by the end of next year who are using APIs. Today I buy on a combination of cost, quality, and a few other business elements like number of disputes. And this becomes table stakes in that algorithm going forward. If you're not implementing APIs, you're going to find yourself handicapped in terms of the amount of business I'm able to do with you. So, predictably, everybody's open to it, and are starting to talk about it internally and where they need to go and when they can get there.
Thank you. So we talked about the ASR process here a little bit, but what are some of the other key obstacles you see out there or things that you'd like to see removed, or steps you'd like to see the industry players take that would help us accelerate the process a little bit faster?
Yeah, I think it comes back to some of the internal transformation of service provider systems. I think, as John, you were referring to, the last 2 years have been transformative for our industry. With networks have always been important, but they have never been more critical. Digital transformation is accelerating. So I think some of the other obstacles is not to view this as a point transformation, but it's really, this is a transformation of our industry. What our customers, and when I say customers, I mean our enterprise and the end user customers, they will consume our services differently. Their expectations are different. So how do we continue to service them in a way that is contemporary? They want updates in real time. They want to know the status of an order in real time. They want to know if there's an outage. They want to know what's happening in real time. Nobody wants to go to a portal and look it up, call somebody and look it up. So it's an opportunity to bring about change that's much bigger than just the API, but use the API as the catalyst to make that happen. I think that's the approach that we're taking in Verizon.
Very good.
And I think you heard Jeff say it's about free cash flow at the end of the day. We've all got a lot of people in our businesses. A lot of those legacy processes involve people. And so if you can make things more efficient, if information is in your system and it can populate my system, then my customer doesn't need to call the sales rep who calls the service manager, who calls the service delivery person, who reaches across to my supplier to get the latest, and then have it come right back down the other way. You take friction out of the system, that makes us all more efficient and hopefully more profitable, along with a better customer experience.
And Stan, you asked a little bit about the challenges. One of the common themes that I heard yesterday in the service provider meeting, and this shouldn't be a surprise to anybody in the service provider community, is those legacy processes, they create a lot of complexity, and it's not an easy change to make in that set of complex systems to be able to automate the underlying business and take advantage of these APIs. And how do you build a business case around that? How do you take what I think is universally a limited resource with your IT development shops and direct them to the right area? That's probably one of the bigger challenges within the service provider community.
So kind of on the idea of addressing those challenges, in the room we've got quite a few of these LSO API solution providers, right, that are helping companies. Some are actually helping companies implement the APIs today. Some have it on their roadmap. What's your message to these folks?
My advice, based on the coaching I got from Aiden, is for people to use a Martis, Aiden would have to stay up all hours of the night to be able to test with another supplier in a different time zone. So the ability to use a third party like Amartis to load our instantiation and have others test against it without Aiden having to stay up all night, I think his quality of life improved. So I had to get a plug-in for those guys.
Yeah, so John's referring to the OIT service, right? The onboarding and interop test service that allows you to do the testing against the buyer and seller emulators, as well as the configuration, the partner configuration.
Right.
Yeah, awesome. Anyone else want to comment?
Yeah, if I can say, I think it's really amplifying the message, right? So there's obviously the service providers, we are buying into it, but the solution providers is when you speak to your partners, your customers, I think it's really amplifying the message around the values and the benefits associated with LSO APIs, right? I think that messaging is very important to continue to get industry adoption. So, you know, every player in this ecosystem is critical to the success of the entire ecosystem.
Yeah, it feels like a small community when you come to an event like this because you recognize so many people. But there are a lot of people that don't necessarily understand what MEF is trying to accomplish and what's been done and where the industry's going when it comes to APIs and automation. And I completely agree, there's a big opportunity to get the message out more broadly.
I'm glad you brought that up because I had a conversation once with one of our senior executives and I said, I don't think the wholesale or the access parts of our business are understood or appreciated as much as they should be. A lot of focus on the retail side and how you square off to your retail customers, but what goes on behind the scenes or down in the engine room to make that work beyond your own network, I think is sometimes underappreciated. And so, as I think it was Pascal said, we should all be evangelists inside of our own companies to talk about the benefits that MEF is driving and make sure everyone's aware and thinking about it.
So I just had one last question. It was a topic of discussion yesterday, the operational APIs, right? So we've been talking about the business APIs, LSO Sonata and LSO Cantata facing the enterprise. But on the operational side, things like service provisioning, service control and change, performance management, fault management. Any thoughts on that, kind of what your thinking is around that and how important that is?
I think, well, it's hugely important. John, I don't remember if it was you yesterday that said, I mean, the volume of transactions you get on the order side can be dwarfed by the volume of transactions that you get on the operational sides for changes to service and management of service. And so, it is from an achievement of our ultimate goal, which is automating our businesses, it's incredibly important.
And if you think about what Jeff said, digital first, you could imagine a world where a customer is experiencing issues and rather than picking up the phone and calling and opening a trouble ticket and having our people run around, they'd be able to run some amount of self-diagnostic or self-checking to see if the network's up, themselves, via a tablet or a smartphone before they call a service provider. So the ability to self-service in that digital first concept, I think, is powerful.
Yeah, and I would say the operational side is getting more complex. Right? Obviously, with SD-WAN in place and others, it's not just an up-down, outage. Is it working? Is it not? There's a continuum of performance degradation. How do you handle that if your application is performing poorly compared to what it did yesterday? What do where do you look at? Who do you call? What do you do? Right? It's not up-down is easy. Right? You can try to find where it is. So I think there's a lot of complexities in the performance side of networks and what the experience is at the application layer. So I think the operational side is critical. Now, I think one of the things we talked about yesterday is these APIs are not going to solve world hunger, right? So let's not, there are some business and operational areas that still we need focus on. I think what these will do is create a simplification layer so that we don't expose the complexity to our customers. But that doesn't mean that the challenges will all magically disappear simply because we've implemented the APIs. I think the challenges are there. Our goal as service providers is to make sure we hide the complexity from our customers.
Well said. I want to thank you all very much. I appreciate the time and energy that you all and your teams have invested in the APIs. So thank you.
There it is. Thank you, Stan and the panel. They were talking about the solution providers, and it's an ecosystem we want to grow. And there's a very, very, very simple formula to do that. And it's really, this is a comment addressed to the service providers, targeted service providers. All you have to do is say to one of your vendors, OSS, BSS vendors, whatever, are you a MEF member? If yes, that's great. If not, that's not great. And you should just go and join the MEF and engage in the LSO activities because we're buying into it. It's very simple. It's the food chain in this industry is very, very well understood. So that's my call to action for the service providers in the audience. And we're going to hear the emerging MEF and blockchain story.
Thank you, Kevin. So blockchain has been coming up over the last few years. People have been talking a lot about it. And more recently, more and more of our MEF members are saying, what's happening in MEF with blockchain? What are you doing? So what we're going to do, and what I'm going to do, is for the next few minutes, I'm going to talk about what we're doing in two areas. One we're calling LSO blockchain, and the other one is integrated trust network, which you may have heard of, the ITN work that we're doing there. And as part of that, I'm going to have Tram Vo, who's co-founder of Mobi, come up. She'll be talking a little bit about how they're using the integrated trust network, and then I'll wrap up with next steps. So why are we working on blockchain in MEF? We've done a huge amount of work on the LSO APIs, and we've been talking about that this afternoon with the panels and the speakers. What are the LSO APIs about? They're about transferring information between two parties, between the buyer and the seller, whether it's pre-order or order or whatever. And so we've really worked hard to streamline that aspect of transferring information. But there is additional friction in the business process, in the supply chain, which is that when you have an agreement, a master service agreement between the buyer and the seller, each party is essentially coding their understanding of that agreement internally, and they're recording the transactions and so on, and those two may or may not match. And at a certain point, they have to reconcile that. So in billing, for example, it may be once a month, they compare notes essentially. One sends the other the invoice, and then you get into disputes and resolution. So we want to solve that problem. And how do we solve that problem? How do we get rid of that friction between the buyer and the seller? So we introduced the concept of blockchain, or what we call here LSO blockchain in the orange box. And blockchain, there's a lot of literature and material on what blockchains are and how they work and so on, and it's rather intimidating, especially for people new to the area. So I'd like you to think about that orange box as a computer, a shared computer, that the buyer and the seller share that computer, and they record information there, and they process that information in a shared place so that there is no need for disputes and reconciliation. Why? Because every time they did something, they recorded it in that shared trusted place on that shared trusted computer, and if there's a problem with it, they'll know it immediately. That shared trusted system is that orange box. And by using LSO blockchain, we can really streamline the whole of the process, not only of billing and settlement, but many, many other use cases, synchronized inventory, or a whole host of other things. What's interesting here is that when we look at LSO blockchain, this construct here, this shared system, we note that we can use the same LSO APIs that we use directly between the buyer and the seller. We can also communicate with this shared system, this shared orange box, using the same LSO APIs. So we use the LSO APIs together with the LSO blockchain to mitigate that business and operational friction between individual links in the supply chain and aggregated over the whole supply chain. So what does that LSO blockchain, what does it actually have inside? Well, without getting into too many details, it has applications, what they call distributed applications, DApps, that manage different sets of code, if-then-else statements, which are more colloquially known as smart contracts. What are smart contracts? Just a set of code that says, if certain conditions happen, then you do this or you do this. That's it. And in fact, you have that sort of code in the internal systems today of the service providers. But what's special here is that when you put that code in the blockchain, you have to agree, the two parties have to agree that that code represents the master service agreement. It interprets it the way that they want it interpreted, and it cannot be changed without one or the other parties knowing. It can be trusted to operate exactly as it was designed to do. And you'll see that we've got some yellow boxes there, and you can write smart contracts for anything. It doesn't have to be for something that involves money. We hear the term smart contract, we think it has to be business. But it can be things like address validation, POQ, you know, or trouble ticketing. But the two that we're really, really interested in at the moment are billing and settlement. So LSO blockchain, this shared system based on blockchain that comprises smart contracts. That is the direction that MEF is going with blockchain. And I click and click. I'm clicking the wrong button. Thank you. So we've got the LSO APIs, we've got the LSO blockchain, and now we've got this black box at the bottom called ITN. ITN, the Integrated Trust Network. Why do we need that third construct, that third element? We need it because that trusted system, that orange box, needs to be able to identify and trust those that are putting information in and taking information out of the blockchain. You need to know who you're dealing with. And we have identity service providers and certificate authorities already in all aspects of the economy, in all aspects of our industry, Okta, Ping ID, the list goes on and on. But they are all centralized. So when you're doing, putting identity, you're putting an identity with them, they're looking after it for you. It's centralized. The move today now is towards a decentralized identity service, a decentralized certificate authority. And why? Because in that way, nobody can control and manipulate the data there. And that is why we need the Integrated Trust Network, because supply chains have many, many, many suppliers that are using different identity service providers, different certificate authorities. We need them to be able to work with a single source of truth in terms of identity. So what is the Integrated Trust Network, this decentralized identity service, this decentralized certificate authority? It's based on W3C standards, which we're very familiar with from many standards on the internet. They have just finished the standard for DIDs, it's called, Decentralized Identifiers. And exactly a year ago, Moby and MEF started to collaborate on creating this integrated trust network. Moby is a consortium like MEF, an industry consortium, but their members are in the mobility space and they're focused on blockchain. They have members like Ford, GM, Stellantis, Denso, the largest automotive parts supplier in the world, the inventor of the QR code, and they have many, many members in that space that are very interested in blockchain for mobility. And what we said is we really need to prove that we're creating a truly decentralized identity service. So let's bring two ecosystems together that are independent of each other, that we can create nodes on this network from very, very different players that will prove to everybody, prove to the world that the integrated trust network is truly decentralized. So we actually today, having gone from 0 exactly a year ago to today, we have 15 node operators, including State Farm, USAA, Ford, Stellantis, which is Dodge, Chrysler, Fiat, Peugeot, Citroën, Denso I mentioned already, and of course, important MEF members, we have Sparkle, we have Gold Connect, we have Koshengo, and MEF itself. We're all operating nodes on this network to create this decentralized identity service, this Web3 directory. And actually, if you look at it, the aggregate revenues per year of the current ITN node operators, they have $450 billion of revenue a year. So nearly $500 billion of revenue are represented by these node operators. And each node is a duplicate of all the other nodes, and they are coordinated using blockchain protocol so that if anybody tries to manipulate anything, everybody else knows about it and they're stopped. So that's the integrated trust network. What I'd like to do is, I'd like to hand off to Tram for her to explain how Moby using ITN. They're much more advanced than we are. Their use cases are in the mobility space. That doesn't mean that ITN can only be used for the mobility space. It can be used for the MEF telecom space, for insurance, for aerospace, for silicon. But I thought it would be a really good idea if you could see what Moby have done. It's really amazing. And then we'll wrap up and I'll talk about next steps. So over to you.
Thank you, Daniel, for the introduction and invitation. Full disclaimer, I'm not a technologist. My background is in chemistry, and then I move on to art, and then art conservation. And about every 10 years or so, I change career again. So right now, I'm focusing in smart mobility and smart city. So maybe in 6 years, I'll be coming for telecoms. A brief history about Moby. Back in 2016 and 17, many of our now Moby members were really excited about blockchain. And they did many proof of concept. And what they found was that putting a vehicle, data, services onto a chain, onto any blockchain was easy. It's not the technology. What they found out was that the applications couldn't scale. And there were two major reasons for that. One, the industry needs standards, how to identify vehicles, how to identify the driver, a trip, when does it start, when does it end, how to share data, and how to settle transactions. And two, the industry was using Web3 technology, but they were building centralized Web 2 platforms. And when they do that, they couldn't convince each other to use their platform. For example, Daimler spent a lot of money, built a mass multimodal platform, couldn't convince BMW to go onto it. BMW spent a lot of money building a supply chain logistic platform, but couldn't convince other automakers to go onto it. And so on and so on. I have many examples, and I'm pretty sure that it's the same thing for the telecoms. And this is the reason why Moby was formed, so that we can create standards And together we can build a Web3 infrastructure for connected ecosystem, not just connected mobility. I know that's what it's saying on there, but for connected ecosystem and IoT commerce. And to enable the Web3 marketplace, we are going through mapping out the self-sovereign digital twin for many of the ecosystem stakeholders, vehicles, battery, people, enterprises. And we are technology and vendor agnostic. So this is a busy slide, but I will walk through it somewhat quickly. So our Web3 infrastructure, we use two W3C standard. One is the DID standard that Daniel mentioned, and one is the VC verifiable credential standard. There are 3 layers in this ecosystem. So the bottom layer is all the different blockchains. The middle layer is the integrated trust network, and that is protocol agnostic, because we can't predict 10 years from now which blockchain is going to be the one that survives. There could be 1, there could be 10, there could be 100. So the integrated trust network is to make sure that nobody's locked into just one blockchain. And then the top layer is the Web3 federated marketplace that we're building, and we call that MEF-CECP. And in this ecosystem, you have 3 different type of players. There is the issuer, the holder, and the verifier of credentials. And they interact with each other using the self-sovereign digital twins. Think of the self-sovereign digital twin as a universal translator. So I can speak Vietnamese and you can speak French and we can speak together. And the second thing is an encrypted locked data vault, a black box. And nobody has access to it other than the controller or the owner of the SSDT. And it stores a combination of static and real-time data throughout the lifetime of the entity. So this whole system uses zero knowledge proof, and when you use zero knowledge proof, you enable 2 channels for communication. The lower channel is the public channel, and that is the integrated trust network. Think of it like a phone book. There's nothing that is PII on there. You don't want to store any sensitive information on there. Each of the DID is only something to find somebody, an identifier. It could be a phone number. So once you find a phone number and you pick up the phone to call somebody to settle a transaction, then you communicate with them on the top layer, and that is a private communication channel. So I won't walk through this, but we are demoing many use cases using this whole layer of 3 layers of integrated trust network, the MEF-CECP, and all these applications, you can read them on our website, dlt.mobi. Every one of them uses MEF-CECP connected to ITN for trusted identity. Without trusted identity, you won't be able to settle any transaction on the internet because you don't know who are you settling transaction with. So here I will stop. We have a 4 minutes video that, Tom, will you play? Thank you.
With urban populations on the rise, cities around the world are looking for smarter ways to manage their existing infrastructure. At the same time, the way people like to move around is also evolving. They want a seamless and efficient experience of integrated modals of transit. A trip is broadly defined as a roaming entity's journey from one place to another. A roaming entity can be almost anything, including a person, a vehicle, a smartphone, or a package. Mobi defines a trusted trip as a journey whose unique attributes are validated by authorized entities within a decentralized network. Mobi Trusted Trip has 2 essential components: verified identity and ubiety certified through time. Decentralized identifiers, DIDs, are a new type of identifier that enables verifiable, decentralized digital identity. According to W3C, a DID refers to any subject such as a person, organization, thing, data model, abstract entity, etc., as determined by the controller of the DID. Why is decentralized identity important? As our lives are increasingly linked to apps, devices, and services, we are often subject to data breaches and privacy loss. A standards-based decentralized identity system can provide greater security, privacy, and control over our data. Ubiety is a unique position in space and time. For a trip to be trusted, it is required that a roaming entity's verified decentralized ID is linked with its location in space over time, along with a minimum set of industry-accepted proofs to ensure that the trip's data can be trusted. Blockchain acts as a trust anchor in a decentralized network, allowing third parties in the network to verify ongoing and completed trusted trips. As the key primitive of the new economy of movement, the trusted trip, together with a mobility platform such as Setopia, will unlock marginal cost pricing for countless mobility-as-a-service transactions, including urban road tolling, meter-free parking, congestion management, carbon and pollution taxing, usage-based insurance, and many more. Setopia is an open and decentralized mobility platform that facilitates third-party verification. Setopia allows the onboarding of decentralized identities for users and providers, along with vehicles, devices, services, infrastructure, and data sets to create the seamless, secure, and private mobility experience that users demand. To understand how the trusted trip works, let's take a look at Setopia and a trusted trip in action. After completing a trusted trip, Setopia users can see relevant data in their trip summary. Trip data is stored on the user's device. Setopia never collects this information. Unlike other map-based mobility apps, Setopia does not store users' data. However, Setopia users can choose to share their data for rewards and incentives. In this way, it not only protects data privacy, it gives users control over their own information and how that information is used. By unlocking almost every use case imaginable for on-demand personalized usage-based mobility, secure and private, the trusted trip, together with a decentralized platform like Setopia, will enable more sustainable, equitable ways of moving, transacting, and ultimately living.
Thank you. I hope that gave you a good taste of what's possible. All the incredible use cases that they can do in mobility. We'd like to do that in telecom. And we'd like to do that not only in telecom, but between telecom and mobility, and telecom and insurance, and between telecom and all sorts of other ecosystems in the connected economy. So what are the next steps in MEF? Well, the first one is we need to get those smart contracts developed. And what we're doing is tomorrow in the Commercial and Business Committee, we're taking our first steps in essentially developing pseudocode for smart contracts that will run on blockchain. And we're going to take the example of SLA enforcement. Sparkle, one of our members, has kindly created an example of that. And we're going to be building on that and enhancing it together with other members. So you are very, very welcome to get involved in that. It's called ether scripting. And as you'll see at the bottom in the graphic, we develop the business requirements and use cases for the APIs. We then based on that, developed the APIs and the developer guides, which then took us to test and certification. So what we're doing now is we're taking that same source material that's already standardized by MEF, the business requirements and use cases that underpin the APIs. We're taking that and we're using it to create the smart contracts. And we want business and product people from our MEF membership around the table using this visualized tool that we have for creating pseudocode. It's very, very business and product. We urge you to get involved in that. We also are going to work on a Hello World case tomorrow, where we show how we've created self-sovereign digital twins for some of our members, and how we can issue verifiable credentials. So our Hello World example is we've created SSDTs for MEF, for Sparkle, for Kashengo, and for Gold Connect. We've created verifiable credentials that they are actually truly members, and we've issued those verifiable credentials so that they can hold them in their SSDTs and prove it to others. And we want to move on from membership to service certifications, technology certifications, professional certifications, and more and more examples, and build up the repertoire that will demonstrate how SSDTs work. And the last step is, if there are any MEF members that want to join MEF, Sparkle, Kashengo, and Gold Connect as node operators, we're ready. We want to grow the network as much as possible. The larger the network is, the harder it is to collude and manipulate data. So just like any other type of blockchain-based network, we want to create as many nodes as possible. So we urge you to join us, be a part of that, and it will be an entry for you into this world. You'll get a lot of knowledge and expertise from the key players here, and you'll be able to accelerate the use of blockchain in your respective companies. So with that, I'll thank you, and I'll hand over to Pascal. Thank you.
So Daniel did the intro to Pascal, so I really didn't need to stand up here. But anyway, we wanted to give a voice to our TAB members, our TAB contributors, and we've asked Pascal to host. You're going to call some of them up. Well, their pictures are there, so we know who they are. But he's going to do a 30-minute panel, and then we're going to wrap up with we're going to have the committee chairs come up after that. We're just going to talk a little bit about what these committees are doing this week, and we'll close the plenary and move on to the elections.
Great. So thank you, Kevin, and I welcome the panelists to get on stage, and I'll introduce, you've got Craig Connors. I don't know what's going on. I'll stand over here. Sunil, Dave Larson, John Madison, and Dave Larson. So this session will be around SD-WAN, SASE, SSE, all zero trust, and we've got great luminaries with us. So why don't we just start, maybe starting from the very far right. Craig, can you just maybe talk a little bit about your background, yourself, and what position, but mainly some of your expertise, because I think I want the audience to know that you guys are truly luminaries and really have that deep expertise. So.
Yeah, thanks, Pascal. So I'm Craig Connors. Currently, I'm the general manager for the SASE business at VMware. I've actually been in this SD-WAN SASE space for about 16 years, so longer than it existed, or longer than it was named. I was there when we came up with the name SD-WAN. So 2006, started at Plenary Networks. I led software development there for 5.5 years. I spent some time in Cisco Advanced Development working on SDN features. And then I joined the founding engineering team at VeloCloud as the chief architect, became the CTO following the acquisition from VMware, and most recently the general manager.
Go ahead, Sunil.
All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Sunil Khandekar. I've been in telecom and networking for many years now, 25 plus years. I've been fortunate to have been involved with 2 startups that led me to be involved in services, mainly business services. The first one was Timetra, where we built what we call them as service routers. And that's when I, along with Pascal, we were really involved in defining VPLS and VLL services, first in the ITF and then ELAN and E-line in the MEF when we started MEF in 2000. And then after that, I was involved with a startup that I built inside Alcatel-Lucent called Nuage. Nuage Networks was really all about SDN and SD-WAN, and I was really fortunate to have had the front row seat in really driving the whole adoption of SDN and SD-WAN, but also building products and capabilities to bring those services to the enterprises. So recently exited Nuage. I'm now working with a few startups.
Go ahead, John.
Yeah, John Madison, good afternoon. I'm the CMO and also head of products for Fortinet, based in Silicon Valley. Been there about 9.5 years. Before that, I was with Trend Micro, about 10 years. They were also in cybersecurity. Before that, with Lucent, for about 10 years. So I've got another year to go with Fortinet. But we're really focused on both what we call networking and cybersecurity coming together in a converged world. I think this year we'll be around a $6 billion company, and we work very closely with our service provider partners.
Thank you, John. Go, Dave.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Dave Larson. I am currently the CTO at Spirent Communications, so focused on the test, validation, assurance of all the different kinds of network services that one might like to test. I've been with the company for about 2 years. I also manage about 40% of the business, which is high-speed Ethernet, 400, 800, 1.6 terabit next, security, and cloud testing. I've been in industry for 25 or 6 years or so, to date myself a little bit, and splitting my time between Ethernet emergent technology and data security emergent technology. I spent time running product strategy for Tipping Point, and I was the CTO and COO of a DDoS defense company called Carrero.
Okay, thank you, Dave. So this is going to be an ad lib. We didn't plan any questions, so it's going to be interesting how this all comes out. I didn't give them any questions. They didn't give me any questions. So let's start with, we all know SASE came out with Gartner. I don't know if I'm getting feedback. Should I shut down my mic or something, or we're good? Anyways, so SASE obviously came up from Gartner in 2019. It took the world by storm, then COVID came in, and it just fit the perfect spot, working from home and everything. So when you guys want to try to explain, I mean, we all know what Gartner defined as SASE, but why it's such a crazy time and everybody's talking about it, and yet there's no understanding what it really is. John?
Yeah, I speak to quite a few customers each week, and every customer I speak to has a different opinion on what SASE is. Okay, so it started as 13 different things. I think now it's down to 5. Eventually, I think they cut it in half again, down to 2. So it's very confusing to customers. I think what it means to us is that, again, this convergence, it's really converging networking and security. Part of that will be on-premise, part of that will be in the cloud. A lot of customers have moved their applications, some applications to the cloud, so they like that cloud edge piece. But again, most of the customers I speak to are going to be hybrid for a long time. In fact, a lot of customers I speak to these days have got OT security issues they've got to deal with. And so, yes, SASE is a buzz term, unfortunately, that everyone doesn't quite understand. I think in the end, it's going to be some of that security that sits in the cloud edge. That's what it's really there for. But it also has to coordinate and orchestrate with on-premise security as well.
So John, you're obviously you're Fortinet. You came from this background, came from cybersecurity, and now all of a sudden you evolved into all these things, SASE, SD-WAN, SSE, all these things. So what are you sell to service providers, you sell to enterprise. What is really going on in the space? What is, I mean, obviously cybersecurity, cybercrime is massive. What is it hybrid? Are they going on-prem with universal CPs? Are they going all on the cloud? I mean, is this really happening? Is this just all hype? Well, what's your thoughts?
There's some hype, but there's some real business there as well. I do think that there's some leading SASE companies are out there promoting themselves right now. We prefer to actually build some of our SASE capability with service providers on your network to make sure your traffic stays there. So I do think over time it'll evolve from a couple of pure play SASE vendors or SaaS vendors today into something that all service providers provide as part of their network.
Craig, any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think I echo what John said. I think, you know, emerging work from home use cases coupled with the rise of connected IoT devices, coupled with modernized applications distributing across networks, has led us to have to rethink the way we approach security, because just a perimeter firewall isn't good enough when the perimeter is dissolved and spread across the network. But I think there's also a lot of confusion. We have the same thing. You know, everyone's trying to jump on the hype cycle of SASE, and you have all sorts of different companies saying that they have a SASE solution when they're missing this piece or this piece or this piece, and that just further leads to the confusion in the market, right? And I think Gartner tried to clarify that a little bit by saying, okay, we'll split SD-WAN and SSE, but that just led to more confusion in the space.
Okay, well, thank you. One question though, do you believe there is this idea, this utopia where all the functions are built by one vendor and they can actually deliver on it, or will it be this idea that vendors will have some of the best of breeds and somehow there's an integration model that integrates these things properly? And I don't think functions are all going to live just in the cloud. There's some has to live at the device, some has to live at the edge of the CP, some will live in the cloud, some will live hyperscalers with the public cloud. So any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, I think part of the reason I joined the tab is because I think standardization in SASE is important. And part of the reason I believe it's important is that I think we're going to live in a multi-vendor world for a long time, right? VMware, we're very good at SD-WAN, 600,000 SD-WAN endpoints out there, which I think is the most in the world. But we're very new to security, right? And so compared to John's firewalls, obviously we've got a long way to go to reach that reputational level of a Fortinet firewall. And so we have lots of customers that are putting those solutions together. And I think we'll continue to see that over time, different solutions coming together and solving these different use cases, as John said, on-prem, in the cloud, in various places.
Great.
Yeah, but I'd also say that SASE is networking and security coming together. So networking's pretty uniform. A switch will talk to a switch, a router to a router. Security is the Wild West. Nothing talks to nothing. There's no connectivity. And so these standards of networking and security need to come together. Security absolutely needs some standards and certification, because right now everyone does their own thing.
Yeah, I think when we had a conversation, you mentioned that it's a wild, wild west in security. Sunil, you founded Nuage, and I think you went from a software-defined center model to then SD-WAN, right? If I remember that right. And then now, any thoughts about, I mean, obviously you know SD-WAN really well. Any thoughts about both the SASE and SD-WAN coming together? And
yeah, look, I think SD-WAN was one of the first mainstream service that became mainstream without any standardization, without any standards bodies getting involved and defining it. And as a result, you know, there was no thought of interoperability or standardization. And it was just an arms race of features and functions that every vendor went to the market with that created closed and proprietary solutions. And MEF, to their credit, has taken that leadership position, defined the service, standardized it, put the service constructs for the vendors, for the service providers. And I think that has really helped. Honestly, although it was a bit after the fact because the solutions were already out in the market, but that really helped vendors start to certify, service providers start to certify against the services and definitions that MEF created. And it allowed, and it's slow going, but it's allowing the enterprises to now have a common definition. And likewise with SASE, I think what we've seen is, so what is SASE? SASE is really an observation, as John said earlier, is that networking and security have to come together for various different reasons, because the entire domain is just spreading too far wide for the enterprises. Now, unfortunately, again, there was no standardized bodies that came together to define what SASE is. And so what happened? Analysts, predominantly Gartner, filled that vacuum and defined SASE. Well, that's okay where you define a like-minded understanding of functions, but when you have no standardized bodies that are actually taking the lead in doing this, what you have is just such a broad umbrella definition that SASE is, and that means all things security. And as a result, every vendor can claim they're SASE compliant. Compliant to what? There's no standard. And so now there's SSC. So I think what you talked about, Pascal, in terms of MEF, again, taking the leadership position to define SASE is, I think, going to be very, very useful, in my opinion, to help enterprises understand what they really need.
Yeah, thank you, Sunil. Dave, any thoughts about, I know we had a nice conversation about ZTNA. You had a big belief in ZTNA, I think, if I'm correct?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, and I'd love to hear, I think people would love to hear, what is ZTNA compared to Zero Trust? And how does it fit in the SASE world? And do you believe that SD-WAN is not needed and ZTNA fulfills that capabilities?
No, I mean, there's a continuum of things that we're going to evolve towards. The comment that it's networking plus security is an important one. ZTNA, Zero Trust, generally wants to get to a more of what we saw earlier in the video, a notion of a consensus or decentralized way of assuring that things that are connecting, service entities or endpoints that are connecting, are authorized to do so, and that nothing else can connect. That is the holy grail of where we want to go. But there's somewhere between SD-WAN that we have today, SASE that we're starting to explore now, and an ability to get this all together that it is managed in a way that is going to take incremental steps that will incrementally benefit everyone who adopts. But there has to be a monetary reason to adopt, and there has to be a security posture reason to adopt any of these technologies, which brings us back to how do you choose? When you're looking at something like SASE, which is an amalgam of IPS, IDS, Zero Trust Network Access, CASB, Next-Gen Firewall, Secure Web Gateway. It is not, I said this earlier today in the tab discussion, it does not mean that it is a superset of all those capabilities. There is a Venn diagram of how all those intersect, and there is a small number of complementary capabilities that exist for those technologies that would be beneficial to be deployed in a given business or a given operational theater. So you want to jump in on that, John?
Zero Trust is much more important than SASE as a concept, as a technology. And when you get to a Zero Trust architecture that has a contextual engine that's specific to your environment, that's going to be the only way you're going to stop some of this malware in the future. To me, it's much more important technology than SASE.
So SASE is a construct, but so talk about more, John, please. What do you?
Well,
how do you see Zero Trust?
SASE today, is, as I said earlier on today, is basically someone's taken the proxy out of the data center and put it in the cloud. That's 95% of SASE today.
Right.
Yes, we've had a bit of firewall in the service and a bit of other capabilities, but that's what it is. Zero Trust is much more important because, as the name suggests, it's Zero Trust for all users and devices to all applications. The trouble is, when you look at a Zero Trust architecture, it's got an endpoint, it's got a policy engine, it's got a proxy enforcement, it's got ID, and you go on. And most customers have 10 different vendors in those situations already. It's impossible to get them to work. So the key to Zero Trust is deciding on the platform, maybe 2 or 3 vendors, and getting those vendors to work, which could be part of the standards organization from here.
Okay, well, thanks. So, we're working on Zero Trust. I'll cover that in a second. What I think the goal is, cover in a second. Craig, you had some thoughts.
I think we all have thoughts on it.
Yeah. So jump in, please.
No, I mean, it's kind of the same to the SD-WAN and what happened in SD-WAN when we didn't standardize. If I think about a Zero Trust connectivity to an application, I need to know the user and trust the user. I need to know the device and validate the device. I need to validate the network. I need to validate the application. So I've got someone doing UEBA, I've got someone doing EDR, I've got someone building a TLS client, I've got someone doing an SD-WAN that I'm transiting across, I've got someone doing application integrity. Well, if you look at ZTNA vendors in the world, there's a lot of people saying they do ZTNA that don't do half of those things, right? So how do I know that I'm actually buying ZTNA if we don't set some standard behind what it actually means from a security standpoint? Because as John said, it's critically important.
Yeah, a really good example is what's really important to the ZTNA policy engine is the posture of the device. From your EDR vendor, probably, that's the best thing. So how is that standardized connection between your EDR vendor, CrowdStrike and other guys, and your ZTNA policy engine. That's very important going forward. But no one's kind of working on that, and the individual vendors don't want to work on that.
Right, exactly. So I think we've defined a framework and probably version 1 to some of that, but we've got a lot more work to do. But I would like to get your thoughts. You had a lot of thoughts on ZTNA, right? And do you want to share them?
Well, yeah, I mean, look, ZTNA, it's really just, it's the first instantiation of Zero Trust. It's the network access piece. In and of itself, that's an important step for us to take. But the Holy Grail is far beyond that. It's Services Federation. It is automatic. It is not just user edge, it's services edge. SASE, of course, is a services edge implementation that, when combined with Zero Trust network access, allows you to federate sort of remote entities and infrastructure entities into a conglomerate whole that can be trusted in some manner. In the end, John points this out, the elements of any connection can only be trusted as far as you understand the posture of the individual elements that there are. And there's a whole lot of work to do as to how we are going to be able to understand from a resolution standpoint, right? This will ultimately come down to resolution. Nothing is ever statically mapped. Everything is dynamically mapped. And the ability to take a namespace request, associate it with an ID, and some kind of a posture introspection that is from a trusted entity. And then on top of it, you have the integrated trust network construct of federation of independent entities that can determine whether or not something is as it is representing itself to the outside world. This is not trivial stuff.
No, it's not trivial.
And so one of the most important elements of how do we go from where we are today to some distant future that has many of the hopes and aspirations that we're all talking about here in a reasonable outcome, it's to begin testing, measuring, and certifying each of the independent steps on the road that will allow us to understand how do we improve what we have today to something that's incrementally better tomorrow, incrementally better the next day, that ultimately serves the interests of a whole host of persona. Operator persona, consumer persona, and vendor persona, service persona.
Well, as usual, Gartner misnamed it. So ZTNA is Zero Trust Network Access. It should be Zero Trust Application Access. That's what it is.
Yeah. Exactly.
So there's Gartner for you. We started implementing, I like Gartner. We started implementing Zero Trust with our own technology almost 2 years ago. We're still probably 60 to 70% of the way through there. There's so many different policies and users and applications which are changing all the time. Zero Trust is an architecture, it's a concept that you need to get to long term, but it's not a button you just switched on.
What about in the slides I always present, and the vision I always had, was there's already Zero Trust at the application layer, meaning, and I think you said application, like the cloud guys have it, they're all going towards Zero Trust. All the applications are going towards Zero Trust, and that's user, device, and application, and its context. That's already existing above us from the network side. Why not have an API? And by the way, we already have in the project, in the CNCF, just got approved the idea of a policy language for Zero Trust in what we call IDQL. It just got approved in the group there, and driven by Strata, who's a member of our Zero Trust group. Why not have an API down into the network where we have a policy decision point or in the policy enforcement points and allow, why would we have two levels of Zero Trust? One networking based in user credentials and device, another one at the application. Why not unify that? Any thoughts on that unification?
Yeah, so I couldn't agree more, by the way. In terms of APIs and to facilitate and extend the automation that as vendors, we've done for SD-WAN, and as enterprises are going to the cloud, how do you automate that particular connection, and so that it doesn't become a bespoke, one-off manual configuration? And the unfortunate part is that right now, for example, we did integration at Nuage with Zscaler, we did it with Fortinet, we did it with Microsoft. Each of them eventually started to have their APIs, but they are their APIs that you have to integrate with, you have to test with. There aren't any standardized APIs, unfortunately, still. And so, and and what that does is you integrate it with them, but then in the next rev of their software upgrade, they change it, and here we go again. We have to again go through the whole process for Microsoft, for Zscaler, for Prisma, Palo Alto, and such. So it is an issue that we have.
Yeah,
and that's the opportunity for MEF.
That's exactly what I told the Zero Trust group. Is like the opportunity is get that API. If you can do you have to do the framework because we all have to agree on things and constructs. But that API between the application layer and the network layer can be all unified for that whole Zero Trust paradigm. So hope the Zero Trust guys are the experts here. So here, let's just switch topic. Certification. How do you certify this whole cybersecurity space? How do you tell someone, hey, your perimeter is secure, and even worse, as you go downstream into markets of medium, small, they have no clue even what SD-WAN is or cybersecurity. What's the answer to this? I mean, we're going to release a SaaS and Zero Trust spec, and unclear how we're going to release certification. Our certification is we test once and you're certified. I don't know if that's possible. Dave, I mean, you're doing a sort of...
Yeah, I mean, so certification and security has changed dramatically over the last decade. It used to be all about being able to see whether an IDS, IPS system, a next-gen firewall could determine through introspection whether something is allowed or not. When we're talking about Zero Trust is a federation of endpoints that's allowed by definition, and nothing else is allowed in. There's no inspection of the traffic to determine whether it's legitimate. It's only whether, from a cryptographic handshake point of view, the endpoints are allowed to speak to each other. Certifying that is different than certifying in the old days. Now, the gentleman here sitting to my right, no, all three of them have been working in areas where it's been an integration of both legacy and application-based security constructs that are moving away from inspection. Let's face it, everything on the network is encrypted.
Yeah, so
what are you going to do? You can't determine what is happening there unless you have a mechanism that allows you a priori to determine through a test environment that you're running a particular class of application with particular network needs, service level requirements through an environment. The only way you can test is to surround it wherever the endpoints live, and they're going to live on end devices, they're going to live on cloud instances, they're going to live on IoT things that are out in the environment, and some set of entities are going to need to bring technology to bear to be able to surround this problem and test it holistically.
So very interesting. But then what happens if it's the Wild West and I get a DDoS attack and brings it down? I mean, Zero Trust is not going to solve that.
Well, Zero Trust is going to solve DDoS another way. Zero Trust is going to solve DDoS to make the endpoints unreachable in any way, shape, or form from a DDoS attack. Those are all directed IP address, either reflected or directed attacks. The real thing is that the application developers and the application operators themselves want to know nothing about the network.
That's a good point.
Right? There should not be a ubiquitous way for you to address something just because you happen to know some number of byte characters that identify something uniquely. That should never be allowed to be able to transit through the system. So DDoS itself is it's an artifact of the fact that we operate open networks. SASE, Zero Trust in general are about closing the networks from an overlay perspective using an open underlay that allows us to have open interoperable reachability from anything, anywhere on the planet at any time.
Got it. Changing topic, John, what's your thoughts on XDR, MDR, EDR? How will this all integrate together with endpoint telemetry? And can you articulate how this is all going to come together? SASE, Zero Trust, XDR, MDR,
lots of acronyms.
EDR, yeah, all these. Can you help us?
Well, coming back to certification for a change, I mean, it's a complete mess for cybersecurity.
Yeah,
it's been a complete mess for 20 years since I've been in the industry. It's not changed. There are some good organizations like MITRE who test endpoint and EDR. Some of the work it does in terms of network testing, but otherwise it's complete. Nobody really knows how good the security is in stopping things. You do pen testing and vulnerability testing to try and look at it, but you don't really know. I would say on your question, another conversation I have from CISOs especially is they're just tired of keep adding vendors to their security portfolio. There's one vendor I speak to, a very large financial organization, has over 100 security vendors inside their organization. Now, that's a bit extreme, but on average, I would say it's about 30 to 35. And none of them work together. None of them share policy or security, and so they're just taking a strategy now of consolidating down. And so when they look at something that's EDR that goes to XDR to try and connect to the network, they're looking at a platform approach, usually the same vendor going forward to extend that system. So endpoint extending into the network, or SIM extending into SOAR and those things. They're usually looking at the same vendor going forward. It's just too complex to make everyone.
But we don't even share telemetry correctly.
Yeah, I mean, without standardization, how do you do XDR, right? I mean, sure, you can do it as a single vendor solution, but if my EDR solution and my NDR solution and my UEBITDA solution are all exporting data in proprietary formats, it can be really hard to pull that all together into a single container.
Right, so the vendors have these ecosystems and partners, and we have an ecosystem and a partner system with alliance partners, and we're all friendly, but you walk into the lowest common denominator.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
That's the problem. Yeah. Like you say, when we change our software, they don't get updated.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, but do you have these ecosystems because somehow people believe that gives you market differentiation? But in reality, it's just still confusing. Wouldn't it be better, like we talked about in the board and tab, to have some commonality to actually share some things and differentiate on top? Do you think that's an opportunity?
It is, and to me, it's sort of, building these standards. Let's not go back to when I was in telecoms 25 years ago and we waited 10 years before the standards are built, then we build it, and then it was out of date.
That's okay.
All right, so there's this one where it's everyone's doing everything really quickly. There's somewhere in between where we build some things that need standardization, like the automation, orchestration, some of the APIs for provisioning. Absolutely, if we could standardize those, that'd be great.
Well, the XDR Alliance was created by a bunch of your competitors to try to standardize that telemetry data of exchange. Not sure if that was more architecture than reality. But
that's one of the issues with cybersecurity. I think they spend at least 15% on marketing instead of spending some of that money on certification and standards.
Yeah. Craig, any more thoughts on certification and Sunil?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think to your point, XDR Alliance is just like an ecosystem. It's a set of vendors that came together and are working together on something, but it's not this broad industry adopted thing, right?
It's complex, and for all the reasons mentioned, and I think it all starts with what we discussed in the tab, as you said, which is let's just define some base functionality, some common terms that everybody can understand, refer to, and less controversial, and then we can start defining and differentiating on top of that. But that has to happen for us to have some ability to influence the way we can, on a sustained basis, have some sort of interoperability in the ecosystem that we participate in because of our customers asking us, hey, I want you to work with this particular vendor, or I want to have access to this cloud or that cloud. So I think I couldn't agree more that there's real requirement and opportunity for MEF to define those base set of definitions for all these things that we're talking about.
Yeah. So we have 5 minutes left, so let's close it off. I'm starting with Dave. What's your thoughts? What can MEF do short term to really close this gap? You can talk about certification, standards, even. What do you think that is?
It's a challenge. I mean, we're a certifying entity where we participate in the development of the SD-WAN and the SASE certifications themselves. And I will tell you, there's a balance between sort of collegial behavior among the community, in which case you want everybody to pass certification. We talked about this at the tab today. Yes, at the end of the day you do, but if that's the case, if you don't have outliers, if you don't have failures to point at, you then sort of water down the benefit that the certification brings to the market. The difficulty for me is that I'm partner and vendor to everyone that's participating in this, and I'm necessarily independent and agnostic. I don't want to be the one that's creating controversy, but somewhere there has to be a demand from the provider and operator and enterprise community to drive for best-in-class differentiation among the competing entities that are in the market. Once that exists, the certifications then hold more strength, and they will evolve to focus on the gaps. I mean, I'm old enough to have been around at the advent of switched Ethernet. And the stupidest thing that ever existed, and it's a test that we still use today, is you test every switched Ethernet product with a 64-byte mesh. There's no such thing as a 64-byte storm in any environment, let alone a perfect mesh. And yet, it was the way that we were able to discriminate among available technologies as to who handled the corner cases the best. We don't push for corner case evaluation right now. We push for lowest common denominator, everybody gets a passing grade. That's okay right now. We're early, but we need to start upping our game with respect to the certifications, the standards detail that allows us to discriminate. Is vendor A better than vendor B? Is service A better than service C? And how do they differentiate depending on what the applications or the business needs are of an individual consumer, or geographical needs, sovereign nation needs, geopolitical needs? All of these things are going to have to be brought to bear on what a good solution looks like.
John, your thoughts?
Well, since Dave took 4.5 minutes, I'll be quick.
Well, no, we got time. Take your time. I want you guys to
stop
do your
aging
thoughts.
us, by the way. You know, one of the areas I think is really important is education and training. We've committed to training 1 million people by 2025. I think the MEF can help us with that and make sure people understand this technology better.
I'd say that, Pascal, what you said 6 years ago when you showed the blueprint of the APIs work that MEF was embarking on, people said, wow, that was a big task, lofty goal. And look what you showed today in terms of the adoption and how it's helping the industry. I think, in my opinion, it's urgent based on the discussion we just had of making sure that MEF really takes the lead in standardizing the SASE and security and the SSC work that's underway in the industry. We don't want SD-WAN all over again, as in vendors rush with their solutions and then we sort of corral and have some standardization. Let's take the lead as MEF in defining this and set the standard, set the bar to help enterprises consume these services consistently.
And MEF-CECP is this amazing, comprehensive documentation about what SD-WAN is. I don't think we need to go all that way in the beginning. As I said earlier today, if we can agree that SASE is, nobody's going to agree because everybody has different definitions, but if we can agree that SASE is SD-WAN, ZTNA, SWIG, and firewall, and some cloud presence, and we can define what is ZTNA, and what is SWIG, and what is firewall, or next-gen firewall, and what is that cloud presence requirement? Is a hyperscaler good enough for hosting, or is it not? Should it be deployed in an SP network, right? If we can agree on just these high-level building blocks of what SASE is, and qualify vendors according to adhering to those building blocks, then we can start decomposing, within ZTNA. Okay, how does EDR have to monitor a device posture, and how should it communicate that data outbound? How should user behavioral analytics work? I think we can start with the big blocks and then start building them down, so that as John said, it doesn't take 10 years to get to like it did with SD-WAN, unfortunately.
Yeah, so I think the message to our members, don't take 10 years, even 2 years. It's going to come up fast. You got to be agile. And I think, two is I want to thank our panelists. We didn't rehearse anything. This is truly passion and inspiration, so give them a big hand, please. Thank you.
That was fun. We're right on track, and I know it's getting late, but we're going to have kind of trying to get this thing. We're going to have a bit of a rapid fire session here, so it's going to be a little less time than we expected. The intent of this panel is just to have each of the chairs do a quick readout, especially for those of you that are new to MEF, quick readout on what their committee does and what they're going to be doing this week, most important items. So I will say I have the pleasure with working with the chairs. I coordinate some of the leadership activities, regular calls that we have, and so on. And it's really a great, very harmonious leadership team that really works together to make sure that we know that the work is in the right place. If there's issues to resolve, we sit down and figure it out, how we need to evolve our rules and procedures, how we have to change, make things more agile, make our processes more agile. So it's really a pleasure working with you guys. So with that said, I am going to ask Laurent from Lumen to kick off here.
Thank you, Kevin. Good afternoon. We'll start with the newest of the four committees at MEF. The Commercial and Business Committee has only been going on for 18 months now. And I don't know if the committee was actually kicked off to really give a voice to business and product people amongst the MEF membership. Amongst what is a very, very technical environment made of software architects, engineers, developers, really an opportunity for this product and business team to give an insight and maybe a direction aligned with the MEF strategy, the strategy that Pascal highlighted earlier on today. Really providing the mid-layer about what the MEF members are seeing in the industry and what, as a standard body, we should be focusing on going forward. So that's what the Commercial and Business Committee does. We've now been meeting, as I said, for a few meetings since January 2021. And I don't know if we can treat the actual duration of our meetings as a benchmark of success, but we started out in January this year as a 2.5-hour meeting only. We didn't have much to talk about. It went up to 4 hours in Paris, and tomorrow we have a full day worth of meetings. Some of the topics which are going to be discussed are showing here on the slide. Starting with the SASE and SD-WAN North Star that Mohit, one of my fellow co-chair here has been now driving for nearly up to a year. And really align with what the Technology Advisory Board leaders just highlighted around SASE. Try to get some insight from the tab and try to move to our second release of the North Star document in the next few quarters. We'll also talk about internet access, align with the customer, the carrier relation management session workshop taking place in September this year. Address validation, few of us have joined us over the past 3 months on setting up the terms of that competition related to address validation. Very candidly, I've had people coming up to me in the past saying that Sonata is lovely, it's a great API, but Sonata doesn't work so well outside of North America due to some of the intricacy of addresses, the format of addresses in various geographies across the globe. What we are trying to achieve here is going out to an international competition, perhaps addressing the academia and getting people coming up to us, providing solutions and really improving, refining address validation as it is defined today. In the second part of tomorrow, we are going to be talking about the LSO blockchain, which is critical going forward to support settlements. And we're also going to have, for the first time ever, a meeting around the integrated trust network, which I'm expecting on the back of Daniel's and Tram presentation earlier on today to be a standing room only. So 3:45 tomorrow afternoon, get there early. No doubt it's going to be pack room before the beers later on tomorrow. Thank you.
Awesome, thank you.
Don't steal all our contributors.
So Chris from Spirent is going to talk about the DSC.
So the problem that the Digital Services Committee is trying to solve first is actually establishing common languages for the services that service providers sell to subscribers. So way back in the day of carrier Ethernet, the conversation about it was very similar to what you heard about SASE up here earlier. It was, the terms weren't defined, and every customer you went to had a different language. One would call it a policer, one might call it a bandwidth profile, one would talk about these things. And it made selling that service, understanding the requirements of the customer and selling that service incredibly labor intensive and difficult. And each time you would also then have to talk about the test plan to accept the service and negotiate that with each customer or describe how you were going to measure the performance of that service. And if you have to do that with all your different customers, the industry can't scale. And so what the Digital Services Committee did in the very beginning is define standards that define the service in an abstract way that is completely independent of how it's implemented underneath in order to facilitate an agreement between the parties. It defines the service activation test requirements, and it defines the service measurements for many different services. And obviously, carrier Ethernet, IP, optical services are now very well defined, so that's not the stuff that we're working on nearly as much anymore. Now we've moved up, we're defining SD-WAN services, we're defining SASE services, we're defining cloud services, and we're defining some of the network slicing type services. And so that's where almost all of our work is. And so, this week we're, I'd say the top items that are really focused, the SD-WAN is always top of mind these days, but we're hoping to, we're on the edge of getting our very first two, the Zero Trust and SASE, the first version of those standards, into letter ballot. So we're doing a final walkthrough of those in these editing sessions. If we determine that the quality is there, then we do the letter ballot. Otherwise, there might be some follow-on and happen between meetings, but it's imminent release of those two standards. And then it's for the first time, there's an industry body out there that has actually formally defined what these things are. Very important. It's the first version of it, and there's a long way to go before any of that's defined, but it definitely establishes us in that space.
Yeah. Thank you, Chris. We now move on to what we call LSOC, which will be Karthik.
So let me give in a quick update on this. The LSO committee, basically our objective is to facilitate automation and digital transformation. And to that end, we work on standardizing the interfaces of the LSO architecture reference points and the interactions that happen over those interfaces. And the way we do that is we deliver like what we call business requirements and use case documents. We actually then publish the API developer guide and the API specifications. And then to go along with the work that was done in the DSC, we standardize the schemas based on the services that were defined in DSCs and the schema guide on how to sort of use it with the APIs that we have published. Right, so that's in a nutshell what we do as an LSO committee. We have about 20 plus deliverables, so I don't think I'm going to go across each one of them. But we had editing sessions yesterday and today, about 4 editing sessions. And today it was standing room only, and very spirited discussions. The next 2 days, if you are interested, we are going to be having an update on all our activities, all the projects. It's going to be, that's where if you don't know what each project is actually really doing, I would encourage you to come in, question the editors, and understand what is really happening in the committee. Also, we'll be voting on 2 letter ballots, and we are also going to rescope a couple of projects. And beyond that, I would just say, just come in, join us.
Great, thanks. Thanks, Karthik. And we'll wrap up with what we call the TCC.
Devesh Gupta, representing the TCC committee here. So we take the work that's done at the LSOC and the Digital Services Committee, and we take it forward and create these certifications that go to market. So we mainly, provide certification services both for MEF 3.0 services and also for the APIs. We're doing professional certifications for individuals, service certs, technology certifications. All of these are programmed within the TCC committee. We're also doing marketing-oriented programs for wider understanding of what the certifications actually do. Recently, on the API side, we've done a separate program which is onboarding and interop. We call that OIT service, where buyer and sellers who are developing API services can come and host their APIs in the sandbox and test. So that is a new service that has been formed under the TCC. And for the professional certs, we provide governance for all the ETPs. So we have the test and certification partners and also the accredited training partners that we work with. And so all of these sessions are going to be coming up. We have two half-day sessions coming up. First one is on Wednesday, first half starting from 8:30 to 12:30, and then the same time on Thursday. So if you can, you're interested in any of these, please do come and join us. Tomorrow, Wednesday morning session is going to be about our LSO automation, about the OIT and the certifications for APIs. If you want to know, where we are, how you can join the OIT platform, when are we doling out the service certs for these APIs, you can come join that session. That's the first session tomorrow. The second one is more towards the SD-WAN and SASE. There was a discussion today in the panel, and also before that in the board discussion today. We'll be working on looking at where we take the SD-WAN certification in phase 2. How do we go ahead and drive the SASE certification? So that's a discussion for tomorrow. And then Thursday morning, we would have ATPs coming in for professional certification. So if those of you who are interested in taking professional certs and you want to know more about that, you could join us on the Thursday morning session. We also have a new program coming up for carrier internet access. So we're looking at coming up with a certification for internet access, same as what we have for SD-WAN and carrier Ethernet. So that discussion is happening on Thursday also. So please come and join us. Thank you.
Yeah, great. Thank you. And there's quite an imbalance, and it's no different than a lot of the organizations building standards. There's really a small number of companies that do most of the work here. And many organizations are happy to consume MEF's work, and you pay your membership and so on, but can't underline the need for contributors. So if your company is, if you like what you see in terms of the work that's being done here, if you can, contribute in any way, whether it's just reviewing a draft document in an area that's close to your, your interest, get one point of contact maybe within your company to kind of take a look at the MEF work and figure out where you can contribute even in a small way if you're not doing it right now. There is in the members wiki, there's a roadmap area, so you can see all of the committee projects. They're tracked there, so you can see it's all on one page, so committee by committee. So if you it's a good place to start if you're trying to get a sense for what's going on in MEF. Everything's on the page. Each of the committees have their own space there. When we've been trying to make the wiki a little bit more friendly to access over the last, made some improvements over the last few months. Well, with that, gentlemen, thank you, and good luck with your work this week.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we're going to wrap up now, and then we're just going to go right into a very short form of our election process, and I'll explain how that's going to work. So just a few things. You've seen Stan up here today, and one of the value adds we're trying to deliver to the membership is more research. So he has a detailed, he's a very ambitious survey and research plan coming up over the next year, but a number of these are already available on the MEF wiki. The SD-WAN and SASE tracker, Carrier Ethernet certification benefits is a survey we did, and of course the LSO adoption tracker, where there's a new version that's just put out. The adoption tracker, you saw, we refer to that quite often. You've seen some excerpt slides, I should say, but it's really an important tool that companies are using to build their business cases to implement, Sonata. So please have a look and provide feedback. And I think that, the companies that Stan has reached out to, Stan, have been really great in terms of agreeing to participate in calls and surveys and so on. Some of them are calls, they're a little bit more onerous. Other ones are just little surveys. So anyway you can participate, it's really helping us, formally track the adoption of MEF work. We started with LSO Sonata. We'll move into the other LSO areas, and then we move to SD-WAN and SASE as well. And just a reminder, we launched this some number of months ago. Go and have a look. It's a work in progress, the LSO marketplace. We have a phased plan to continue to add functionality to that, and any feedback you can provide or any requirements you think functionalities you think we might want to add to that. Daniel from the staff owns that as one of his programs that he manages. If you haven't listened to this, these are really good podcasts with Pascal is bringing on, some of the vendor community and service providers. There was a new one just launched, was released last week with Frank from Orange. I listened to it in the gym yesterday. Frank, very good. But they're really good. They're very kind of laid back and relaxed, not too technical, broad audience appeal. And so you can get that, you know, on your favorite platform, the Apple Store or whatever, and Spotify and so on and so forth, wherever you like to go. So, and we'd like to get your feedback on those. If you'd like to participate too, you know, and if you're, it's an executive thing, so if you're an executive and you'd like to participate, let us know. And you know, at Paris, we asked the audience to follow us on LinkedIn at the end of the plenary, and we had a whole bunch of new people following us, and the marketing folks are doing a good job of growing our followers. We have targets month over month. We're right on track. We'd like to exceed that, and obviously these days social media is a big communication tool.